the great swordsman of Marvel. Hey, fanfic family. So glad to see you here again to continue this incredible adventure. As always, kindly remember, this story is 100% fiction, so don't go looking for dimensional portals in your closet. All rights to this fantastic novel belong to the original author. We're just your humble narrators of epic tales. Are you enjoying the fanfic? Show it by subscribing to our YouTube channel and dropping us a like. And if you're impatient for more exclusive content, our Patreon is your happy place. Chapter 76 Operation. Immediately, the Iron Man suit slowly descended from the sky, landing on the circular area of Stark Tower. Upon landing, the Mark VI Iron Man suit on Tony's body was removed. Tony then entered the interior of Stark Tower, where Loki was casually seated in a chair, observing Tony's arrival. "Oh, you lowly little bug, you've come too? Looks like your brain's still sharp, guessing I'd be here so quickly." Tony calmly approached Loki, gradually moving closer to the table. Taking advantage of Loki's inattention, he placed his hand on the tabletop and onto his fan. This was the key to activating the Mark VI, another trump card that gave Tony immense confidence. "Loki, believe me, you won't succeed. Last time, your father and grandson came to Earth, and they left in disgrace, returning to Asgard. You must know that, so I advise you to be smart. If you don't want to be beaten into pulp, slinking away with your tail between your legs, surrender now." Tony's words were harsh, but they immediately enraged Loki. Loki was furious. He was practically bursting with rage. A mere mortal placed before him? Who does this guy think he is? "Chen Feng," Loki roared, "humble mortal, do you think you can defy a god? You're nothing but a tiny ant. I'll show you the consequences of angering me." Loki picked up the staff in his hand, which emitted a brilliant blue light, seemingly emanating from it. Tony's expression changed, but he tried to remain calm, pointing at Loki and saying, "You've already done us all a disservice. We'll show you the power of Earthlings. The blood debt you owe cannot be escaped. It must be repaid." Tony and Loki walked towards each other, facing each other, neither wanting to lose in terms of momentum. Loki, unfazed, glared at Tony with a menacing look. "Really? Should I say I'm terrified? Ha ha ha, let me send you on your way." As he spoke, Loki suddenly launched a sneak attack, his scepter, gleaming with a deep blue light, piercing directly into Tony's chest. Clang, sparks flew. The crisp sound of metal clashing rang out. The expected result didn't occur. Loki, whose move always worked, froze, a look of confusion and bewilderment flashing in his eyes. How could this be? Tony also shuddered, his chest heaving, letting out a deep breath. He wasn't wearing his Iron Man suit yet. Being pierced by such a sharp scepter could very well mean instant death, like Kelson. What happened? Loki withdrew his scepter and struck the same spot again, but only a crisp sound was heard. Tony remained unchanged, his gaze fixed on Loki with a hint of unease. Loki didn't understand. The scepter, possessing unparalleled power, was actually blocked by an Earthling. This was the secret weapon that person gave me, the one to rule the Earth. But now, all I could say to Loki was, "Damn it, Loki." The arc reactor that Tony mentioned had saved his life. Without it, there had never been a problem before. Loki stared at the scepter in his hand, his eyes flickering, unable to understand, utterly unable to understand why. "You're supposed to be a god, yet you're so useless. You're no good, Loki." Tony's face was playful, his eyes fixed intently on Loki. Loki lifted Tony up, cutting him off. His expression was one of utter rage. He grabbed Tony's body and flung him away. Cough cough, Tony lay on the ground, his face flushed, breathing heavily, already near the French windows. Just one more hit. Just one more hit. And Tony will fall from the hundreds of meters high Stark Tower. "You little bug, you think you can challenge the might of the God of War? You think you can do whatever you want just because the scepter is ineffective against you? What do you think you are? A lowly mortal?" Loki roared, unleashing a surging, boundless power, like the vast ocean, that swept across the heavens and earth, shaking the very fabric of space. "Loki, believe me, you don't want to throw me off." Tony looked at Loki getting closer and closer, his expression panicking. "Damn it. This place is 200 or 300 meters above the ground. If he falls, he'll be turned into a pile of mud. Most importantly, Tony isn't wearing the Mark VI Iron Man suit yet. Frankly, he's a complete mortal. Moreover, the Mark VII is still in the testing phase. If it fails to connect to the body via sensors, it will be a major disaster. No way? With your status as a nobody, Loki sneered. Then, cleanly and decisively, he kicked Tony, sending him flying through the air like a broken sandbag, shattering the glass behind him. Tony, still in midair, anxiously commanded Jarvis, "Jarvis, activate the Mark 7 armor quickly." The next moment, a suit of steel armor burst out from Stark Tower, flying towards Tony at top speed. At the last second, just as Tony was about to crash to the ground, he finally donned the Mark 7 armor. Boom! An astonishing burst of energy erupted. The thrusters in his palm spewed out scorching flames, and the opposing propulsion propelled Tony back to the top floor of Stark Tower. Tony, wearing his new armor, stood before Loki once more. "I told you, you wouldn't want to take me down, but unfortunately, you ignored my advice." Tony raised his right hand, a beam of energy emanating from his palm. Loki's scepter also shone brightly, but his movements were slower than Tony's. The energy beam struck Loki, instantly knocking him to the ground, the scepter falling to the ground. At that very moment, the Tesseract on the top floor seemed to have finally completed its operation, a beam of light shooting skyward like a great sun, seemingly connecting to the depths of the universe. Above the Tesseract, a hole several kilometers wide suddenly appeared, a door. It had finally opened. The future of humanity had finally arrived. We were about to enter a new era. To welcome the new light. Dr. Eric, beside the Tesseract, shouted excitedly. "Go back to sleep peacefully." A tranquilizer dart flew from his Iron Man suit, striking Dr. Eric in the neck. Soon, Dr. Eric lost consciousness and collapsed to the ground. "The world is finally quiet." Tony breathed a sigh of relief, his ears finally feeling better. Loki stood up, his eyes blazing with malice. "The world is quiet, you little bug, are you dreaming? My team fungus is here, you're all going to die." The scepter returned to his hand. Suddenly, an energy beam shot out. But Tony completely ignored Loki, his feet radiating energy as he hurtled towards the gate. Chapter 77 Strange. Swarms of Chitauri invaded Earth through the portal opened by the Tesseract. To become stronger, the Chitauri race had modified their bodies, making them almost 80% mechanical. This resulted in formidable fighting power, making them difficult to defeat even individually. It's like the seemingly insurmountable gap between ordinary humans and cyborgs. Bang! Tony's energy beam swept out from the center of his palm, each shot accompanied by a deafening explosion, and various miniature bombs rained down from his body. But all of this was like a pebble dropped into water before the endless Chitauri. It was nothing compared to the sheer number of Chitauri. Tony was completely absorbed in the attack. Several key kingdom aliens, who were thinking together, rushed towards him without dying. Even under the firepower, the Kego aliens were not immune. After the attack, the warmth inside the clothes quickly reached the sky. Tuo's speed was also increasing. Tuo shouted loudly into the communicator, "Guo Yi, we people, one person is not enough for this side of the sky." 1-800-M-800-M. One day, the star line went, and dozens of Kego aliens' bodies were hit. In the Garden of Stars, a cloud was formed. The scene was earth-shattering. But all this was just a drop in the ocean. More Key Kingdom people were still attacking. The action was still ongoing. Luo Duanli said, "Tuo, hold on a little longer. We have already reached the field." The fighter jet was on the ground. Luo and Dr. Zhao went in and out together. When they saw the picture, the two of them were stunned. The Chitauri from the Ekla sky, like insects, made people look at Chadeo. "Sir, you can make your move now, go to Tony." With his current strength, he couldn't deal with Tony high in the sky. Why is he stuck? Banner was somewhat confused. He was also bewildered, blinking, not understanding why Hulk had actually retreated. Generally speaking, Hulk liked to possess his body and wreak havoc. This strange behavior made Banner focus his attention on Chen Feng. What did Chen Feng do while I was unaware? How strange. Tony flew in midair, shouting, "Hey! Stop standing there. Can't you see all these Chitauri? Damn it, if you don't come soon, I'll be overwhelmed by these insects." Relying on his even faster speed and agile movement, Tony maneuvered among the skyscrapers and fought the Chitauri. At the same time, more and more Chitauri entered Earth, and even a giant cyborg dragon entered from outer space. Chaos. Utter chaos. The city of Zoro was plunged into utter chaos. The Chitauri army attacked without mercy, and countless ordinary citizens fled in panic. The Zoro police were also thrown into panic, unable to evacuate the crowd in time. A terrifying sword aura swept out. All the Chitauri within a 200-meter radius were shattered into pieces by this all-destroying sword aura. Captain, shouldn't you be in charge here? If you hesitate any longer, Zoro will be devoured by these insects, Chen Feng reminded him. This brought Rogers, who had been deep in thought, back to reality. He felt that even during the Second World War, he had never witnessed such a grand and spectacular battle. Especially since it was a battle against aliens. It was unprecedented. I understand, Rogers came back to his senses. Kill, kill. Ha ha ha. Enjoy me to the fullest. The more of these lowly mortals who die, the better. Loki, atop Stark Tower, leisurely admired the scene below. Watching the helpless Chitauri being attacked by the Chitauri, and a smug smile appeared on his face. Thor suddenly appeared from nowhere, flying to the top of Stark Tower and standing in front of Loki, loudly admonishing him, Loki, shut down the Tesseract. Stop making mistakes. You're just being used, Thor. Do you think I'd be used? I'm about to rule the earth. Do you think I'd give that up, go back to Asgard with you, and face that foolish old man Odin's judgment? Hearing Thor's words, Loki became agitated and roared angrily. Damn it. Loki had had enough of Thor's condescending pronouncements. From beginning to end, they were just jealous and envious of his immense power. After I rule the earth, you can tell that old man that I've accomplished what he couldn't, and he should reflect on why Asgard's status in the Nine Realms has declined and become increasingly despised. Loki, you're wrong. You're just blinded by hatred and power. Enough, I don't want to hear your rambling. I am a god, the god who will soon reign over all of humanity on earth. Loki roared furiously, his scepter erupting with light that illuminated half the sky. A powerful energy ray, long brewing, suddenly shot forth clang. Arcs of electricity crackled on Thor's hammer, and Thor destroyed the energy ray with a single blow. Go back to Asgard. Don't get in my way. Loki flashed forward, his scepter gleaming, and finally thrust it towards Thor's body. Clang. A clear, resounding clang echoed. Thor's hammer knocked the scepter away, and Loki fell to the ground along with it. Loki, even with your help, you still can't beat me. Just surrender. Thor looked at Loki lying on the ground, his face filled with sorrow and self-reproach. Thor believed that Loki's rebellious nature was largely due to him. Is that so? It seems you're still as forgetful as ever, Loki chuckled, his expression somewhat eerie. But before Thor could react, a chilling aura suddenly came from behind him. Thor dodged to the side at top speed, but was still pierced by a sharp blade. A bloody gash appeared on his body. Thor rolled backward in pain, quickly tending to his wound. You're all brawn and no brains. You should see a doctor, Loki said dismissively. He then threw Thor off Stark Tower. Goodbye, don't bother coming back. Loki waved his hand coldly as Thor slid down the tower. Captain, it seems your plan will have to wait. Chen Feng stared at the massive mechanical dragon, thousands of meters wide, that suddenly appeared before him, a strange smile creeping across his face. Dr. Banner, now you can get your reward? Rogers looked at Dr. Banner, a hint of certainty in his eyes. I've always been indignant, Dr. Banner said, walking towards the distant mechanical dragon. This is going to be good, Chen Feng chuckled, a fleeting, almost imperceptible glint in his eyes as he watched Banner approach the mechanical dragon. Roar, Banner roared, his body swelling, his clothes ripped open, leaving only his incredibly sturdy frame. The green glowing figure of the dragon, like a whirlwind, pierced the ground, using the momentum to propel itself towards the mechanical dragon. Rocks tumbled through the air. A powerful shockwave swept through the air. Chapter 78 Annihilation. A deafening explosion echoed through the air. A violent, almost tangible, pressure surged forth. Hulk unleashed a powerful punch, piercing through the massive body of the mechanical dragon. With its head blocked, the rest of its body crashed onto its head, like a truck with its front wheels locked, suddenly flipping forward and about to crash. Watch out, Tony suddenly flew behind Hulk, firing a powerful armor-piercing round at the mechanical dragon. A violent explosion followed. The mechanical dragon instantly disintegrated into countless metal fragments, plummeting from the sky. As the saying goes, you've turned green, but you've also become stronger. Chen Feng shielded Tasha, pulling her into his arms. Not long after the mechanical dragon was destroyed, hordes of Chitauri swarmed towards the group, seemingly endless. Jack is disrespectful, Hulk, his eyes bloodshot, roared at the Chitauri, leaping from the ground and grabbing a Chitauri flying through the air. With a powerful thrust, he tore the fallen Chitauri in half. Damn it. When will these aliens ever stop? Tony, having killed several thousand Chitauri who seemed to be growing ever larger, looked on with exhaustion. Chen Feng, his eyes indifferent, held the gale wound in his hand, waiting for the Chitauri to gather more before wiping them all out with a single sword strike. Sharon, but before Chen Feng could act, a deafening thunderclap suddenly erupted, like a bolt from the blue. The sky was filled with a blinding barrage of lightning. In an instant, the entire 990-degree space was filled only with terrifying lightning. The entire sky was illuminated as if it were daytime. Bright. A deafening impact swept through the area, reducing all the Chitauri trashes and vanishing completely. At that moment, Thor descended from the sky, landing beside the group. "How's Loki?" "And the Tesseract?" Rogers immediately asked. "Need you even ask? Just look at him, you can tell he failed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have vented his anger on these insects." Chen Feng pursed his lips, mercilessly exposing the truth. This made Thor somewhat embarrassed. It had to be said, every time Thor lost to Loki, it was due to his own carelessness. Just as Loki said. He never learns. Stone agrees with Chen Feng, Tony chimed in. Never mind that for now. The enemy has already taken over our territory. Captain, tell us your plan, Tasha interrupted Tony and Chen Feng's pointless conversation. The most important thing now is to defeat Loki and stop the Tesseract from continuing to release its energy. The plan is in place. I'll mainly evacuate the personnel and fight on the ground, while you will be responsible for some more dangerous tasks. Rogers finished speaking and looked at everyone. Each of them had a firm gaze, unmoved, except for Chen Feng, who remained relaxed and indifferent throughout. Loki, seeing the Avengers who showed no sign of flinching, felt a cold glint in his eyes. He increased the Tesseract's energy again. With this abundant energy, the gate expanded once more, becoming even wider and taller, releasing more and more Chitauri. In an instant, the entire sky above the city was surrounded by Chitauri, like a flood about to burst its banks, causing immense terror. Fear. Everyone was terrified. Anyone witnessing this terrifying scene would feel utterly powerless. If they all rushed down, the entire city would likely be overrun by the Chitauri. Rogers began directing everyone in the fight, assigning tasks to each person. You go and occupy the high ground, keep a close eye on the battle's progress, and then send us information. But you also need to be extra careful, as we might not be able to help you in time. You must always be aware of the enemies around you. After assigning the task to Rogers added a sentence. After all, I was just an ordinary agent. No matter how strong he was, he couldn't compare to the others. Fighting the Chitauri from a high vantage point was still fraught with danger. "Oh, I can handle that." Chen Feng stepped forward. "What method?" Rogers' eyes lit up upon hearing Chen Feng's words. Ensuring everyone's safety was his greatest wish. "I've learned some basic magic, enough to cast a spell on Hawkeye, which will naturally form a shield around his body to protect him," Chen Feng explained quickly. "Time is of the essence. Currently, I can only cast a small portion of low-level spells. Higher-level spells take too long." "That's fine then. Please, Chen Feng, cast the spell on Hawkeye now." Rogers sincerely thanked him, then turned to Tony. "Tony, you hold the line and prevent these alien creatures from escaping to the outskirts of California. We must resolve the fight here. Leave it to me." Tony's feet emitted energy, and he was about to leave when he suddenly glanced at Chen Feng. At this moment, Chen Feng had already cast the spell on Hawkeye. Tony paused, walked to Chen Feng's side, and shamelessly said, "Chen Feng, cast a spell on me too, okay, but you still remember, you owe me another favor." Chen Feng shrugged. But this wasn't something he could forget. It had to be repaid. "No problem, it's just a favor, come on." Tony laughed, already owing Chen Feng favors, and since he already had several, he wasn't afraid of getting another one. This time, Chen Feng cast a spell on Tony to reduce his weight, decrease friction, and create a protective shield. With this, Tony charged forward, confident of victory, into the Chitauri's giant star. Boom! A dense barrage of bombs and bullets rained down, and countless flames appeared in the sky, beautiful like fireworks. "Thor, you're responsible for clearing out the grunts at the portal and preventing them from sending more troops. You must eliminate them as much as possible before they enter Earth." Rogers looked to Thor. This was the most demanding task, and correspondingly, it was assigned to the more capable Thor. He was a god of Asgard, and his strength, physical prowess, and stamina were unmatched by anyone present, except for Chen Feng. Leave it to me. Soul gripped the seed of Thor, which flew out rapidly, reaching the highest spire of the kingdom in moments. Zzzzz. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Arcs of electricity crackled on the seed of Thor, and countless bolts of lightning were suddenly released, like divine light splitting the heavens and earth. The Chitauri who had entered Earth were instantly struck by lightning, the overwhelming force turning them to dust. Chapter 79 Stalemate. Hulk, you? Rogers looked at the other Hulk, paused slightly, and then said, your mission is to take action. Hulk's face lit up with joy. Destruction was his favorite thing, and his longest-running activity. Haha, Jack loves it. Hulk pounded his chest with both fists, then leaped forward, his eyes gleaming as he charged towards the scattered Chitauri. This time, without anyone else's restraint, he wanted a quick and decisive victory. Romanoff, you and I will stay on the ground to fight. Chen Feng, you have other missions. Chen Feng frowned, immediately somewhat reluctant. Leaving Tasha on the ground was definitely dangerous. Besides, she was just an ordinary agent. Even if she could handle 1 or 2 Chitauri, what about 5, 6, 7, or 8? Chen Feng was not at ease and would not agree to leave Tasha behind. Rogers naturally saw Chen Feng's concerns and reasonably persuaded him, Chen Feng, you are the only one here, and I think you can handle the Tesseract. So I need you to go to the top of the Tower of a Stack to do this. Don't worry, I won't let Tasha lose a hair. I will do everything in my power to protect her and won't let anything happen to her. These touching words might have been enough for others to agree for the sake of humanity. But Chen Feng was different. He only cared about the safety of the people he cared about. As for others, even if the heavens fell, they couldn't withstand him. Before the big battle, Chen Feng sent Mindy to the safest place in S.H.I.E.L.D. to stay with Jane Fords. Darling, can't you enter the void anytime? If I really can't hold on here, I'll ask you for help immediately. Don't underestimate me. With these weaklings, who's going to be next? A confident smile appeared on Tasha's face. Chen Feng hesitated for a moment, seeing the unwavering determination in Tasha's eyes. He shrugged helplessly. Okay, I promise you, Jay. But Captain, if anything happens to Tasha, I will inflict all the pain on you. Believe me, this is far more terrifying than being trapped in the iceberg for decades. After saying this, Chen Feng's figure flashed and disappeared in front of the two. Rogers couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart, and the hairs on his body stood on end. The sharp pain penetrated deep into his bones, as if falling into an ice cave. In the blink of an eye, Chen Feng arrived at the top floor of Stark Tower. Loki was still silently admiring the battle below, looking quite interested. However, the moment he saw Chen Feng, his face turned black. Loki, I still vividly remember being brutally beaten on the Rainbow Bridge and being defeated by a single sword strike at the party. Even with that person's help and the immense power of the scepter, I was still so weak and insignificant in front of Chen Feng. It was as if Chen Feng was my nemesis. You can get off your seat now. Chen Feng's seemingly ordinary words revealed his domineering aura. It was a kind of supreme power that made people kneel down. Chen Feng, I can promise you that after I conquer Earth, you will share this planet with me, and you won't need to manage it. I will handle everything. You just need to enjoy this supreme power. How about it? Loki smiled obsequiously. Unable to defeat Chen Feng with force, he would try to persuade him with his brain. He wasn't like Thor, who only knew how to swing his hammer. That's really a stretch. I'm not interested in that, Chen Feng coldly said. Power and wealth are things I can obtain anytime I want. Unfortunately, I don't covet them. Chen Feng walked step by step towards Loki, his expressionless face making it difficult to guess what he was thinking. Ha ha ha. Can we still talk things over? Whatever you want, I can give you. Loki spread his arms, trying his best to please him, while his body involuntarily retreated. A hint of fear flickered in his eyes. Being considered by Chen Feng was, once again, something Loki completely didn't want. Perhaps tell me how to shut down the cosmic cube, and I might let you go. Chen Feng stopped and said, word by word. Shut down the cosmic cube? It can only be opened, not closed, you know? Loki's eyes flickered, but he quickly calmed down and said with a smile. There's always a solution. Maybe you don't want to tell me because you know that once you shut down the cosmic cube, you will have no chance of winning and will be completely defeated. Chen Feng's casual words made Loki's eyes suddenly tighten. No. Impossible. How could this be? How did he see through my thoughts? He guessed. Yes, he must have guessed. Loki hurriedly turned his gaze to the distance, not wanting Chen Feng to notice even the slightest thing that was wrong. A moment of stalemate. Chen Feng waited for Loki's answer, while Loki fell silent, as if waiting for something. Attack him. Suddenly, Loki leaped and flew onto Chitauri's small flying mount. Behind Chen Feng, a large group of Chitauri gathered, their weapons all aimed at him. Suddenly, light flashed and converged in the sky. Bang! Bang! Unleash boundless energy rays, attacking Chen Feng relentlessly. However, the next moment, Chen Feng vanished from his spot, all the attacks missing their mark. Then, behind the Chitauri, Chen Feng suddenly reappeared. A dark energy pulse, a fan-shaped arc, swept out, engulfing all the Chitauri. Countless mournful cries echoed as the energy pulse, carrying the corpses of the Chitauri, disappeared into the air. This was the terrifying power of void energy. The terrifying void power instantly killed them, then carried their bodies back into the void, becoming nourishment. Seeing this, Loki's expression changed drastically. A deep-seated fear urged him to leave immediately. All the Chitauri were swallowed up by the void energy and vanished from the world, leaving Loki heartbroken and feeling as if he had fallen into an icy abyss. At that moment, it felt as if he had arrived at the coldest place in the world, the biting wind penetrating to his bones, making his whole body tremble. It was the fear of the soul. He would die. Quickly. He had to escape. Under Loki's command, the Chitauri hurriedly turned their ship around and sped away into the distance. The terrifying aura emanating from Chen Feng terrified even these aliens. Instead of pursuing Loki and the Chitauri, Chen Feng walked to the cosmic cube. A surge of energy emanated from the cosmic cube, maintaining the gate in the sky above. As long as the cosmic cube was closed, the gate to the sky would automatically close, and the Chitauri would be unable to enter Earth. Good luck. Chapter 80 closed. The void opened. Chen Feng reached out to approach the cosmic cube, but was repelled by a powerful energy. Had Chen Feng not been strong enough, this attack would have sent him flying. Undeterred, Chen Feng exhaled and channeled the energy of the void, approaching the cosmic cube again. This time, it worked. The cosmic cube's core is the space stone, possessing the power of space, identical to the power of the void. Therefore, these two similar energies did not repel each other. Chen Feng's right hand slowly approached the cosmic cube. Just as he was about to grasp it, an even more powerful force was released, violently resisting Chen Feng's right hand. At this critical moment, Chen Feng gritted his teeth, increased his void power, and clashed with the cosmic cube. In just 3 seconds, beads of cold sweat appeared on Chen Feng's forehead. Bang! Chen Feng was once again repelled by the cosmic cube's energy. Sherlock. My void energy is still lacking compared to the space stone, Chen Feng cursed inwardly. He desperately wanted to draw Void Hero to improve his control over the void. Right, equipment. Just as Chen Feng was at a loss, equipment suddenly popped into his mind. With the enhancement of equipment, Chen Feng could improve the overall strength of his hero, which would also improve his control over the power of the void. Soon, Chen Feng went directly to the shop to select equipment. Rabadon's Death Cap, Luden's Echo, a max-level Mage's Soul Stealer, Archangel's Staff, Zhana's Hourglass, and Flame Embrace. When Chen Feng came to the cosmic cube again, a confident expression appeared on his face. His right hand suddenly stretched out and plunged into the energy shield. The surrounding space seemed to tremble, showing signs of being distorted. Chen Feng's right hand gradually approached the cosmic cube at a speed visible to the naked eye. And the cosmic cube suddenly erupted with its most powerful struggle. Rumble. The heavens and earth trembled. Endless spatial power erupted, causing the entire sky to tremble. The gate that had opened above began to shrink. Chen Feng gritted his teeth, releasing boundless void power from within his body. The two forces intertwined, like giant serpents coiling around each other, each occupying half of the sky. Astonishing fluctuations swept across the sky. The void trembled as the two enormous, nearly equal energies clashed, like dragons and tigers locked in a fierce struggle, locked in a moment of stalemate. Neither energy was willing to yield in this clash, each trying to overpower the other. It could be said that even with 6 pieces of equipment, Chen Feng was unable to subdue the cosmic cube for the time being. The energy contained within the space stone was astonishing, seemingly boundless and unfathomable, its explosive power truly shocking Chen Feng. Even Chen Feng's face showed astonishment. If I can obtain this space stone, my control over the void will reach an extremely terrifying level. At that time, The universe and all worlds will be at my command? The thought of this scene stirred a surge of excitement within Chen Feng, causing his inner power to erupt uncontrollably once more, a truly earth-shattering event. But at this crucial moment, a massive horde of Chitauri, fearless and relentless, closed in on Chen Feng. Their weapons flashed with intense light, unleashing endless beams of energy that attacked him. At such a critical juncture, even the slightest disturbance could have irreversible consequences. Chen Feng's gaze was icy. Stabilizing his energy, he quickly withdrew his right hand from the barrier of the cosmic cube. A dark, ethereal energy beam, casually unleashed, carried an unimaginably terrifying aura, engulfing everything in its path, inspiring utter dread. Boom! A stellar explosion. All the energy beams were absorbed, swallowed whole, and the Chitauri were swept into Lord Yin Zhao's ethereal energy. A few seconds later, the energy beam shone brighter. Then, it vanished from the world. Thank goodness. He was stopped from taking the Tesseract. Loki, watching Chen Feng leave the Tesseract from afar, breathed a deep sigh of relief. He was horrified. His heart was also incredibly shaken. Loki knew how terrifying the energy possessed by the Tesseract was. Even he, a god, could break through the Tesseract's energy barrier at this moment, let alone contend with the energy released by the Tesseract. The result of doing so? Loki might have died hundreds of times over. Even someone as strong as Loki could only rely on the Tesseract's energy, not control it. Where am I? Just then, Dr. Eric, who had been drugged by Tony's tranquilizer darts beside the Tesseract, slowly rose from the ground. He opened his eyes, looking at the Tesseract before him, seemingly very surprised. Dr. Eric, get out of here quickly. Chen Feng walked over. For an ordinary person, especially an elderly person, every second they stayed here brought them one step closer to death. However, Dr. Eric didn't leave. Instead, he stared blankly at the cosmic cube before him, asking in confusion, "Cosmic cube, has it been activated?" "Yes," Chen Feng nodded. The most urgent thing was to get him away from this place. It must be closed, otherwise the gate to Earth will remain open, and aliens will invade Earth. Dr. Eric's face was pale, his tone extremely urgent, pulling Chen Feng, unwilling to leave. "Of course I know that. Look at Jodan, the Chitauri have already invaded. Do you have a way to close it?" Chen Feng asked impatiently. He was getting fed up with this old man. He said he opened the cosmic cube under the control of the Foundation, but in other words, he was the culprit. Cosmic cube, of course there was a way. As long as we got the Foundation's authority, we could close it immediately. What? He never expected that Dr. Eric actually knew how to close the cosmic cube. Alright, your mission is complete. Consider it making amends. Chen Feng quickly opened a barrier, pushed Dr. Z.H.I.K. inside, and sent him to a safe place. Chen Feng said through the communicator, "Xian, give me a heads up about Loki. Shoot him down from the sky? That's lucky. Loki is right in front of me now." Hawkeye drew an explosive sword from his back and knocked it on his bowstring. With a bang, the sword flew towards Loki at top speed, directly facing him. Loki, sitting on the Chitauri spaceship, grabbed the sword with one hand, revealing a knowing smile. But the next moment, a red light flashed. The sword exploded, blasting Loki off the spaceship and crashing him onto a tall building in the distance, his horned helmet lying nearby. "Hawkeye, I did it." After saying that, Hawkeye hung up the communicator, immediately drew his sword again, and shot down the Chitauri rushing towards him. Chapter 81 Good luck. Standing at the highest point, one faces attacks from countless enemies. Fortunately, Chen Feng's magical shield alleviates the pressure on Du Yan. Upon receiving the news, Chen Feng quickly headed towards the high point where Loki was. At that moment, Hulk was on the back of a mechanical dragon, relentlessly attacking the onrushing Zeta aliens. This guy is too strong. All of us are easily defeated by Hulk, like small fry, unable to withstand a single blow. Hulk arrived on the back of the mechanical dragon, one by one, a Zeta alien. But his main objective was the mechanical dragon below. Hulk. This guy's head is too big. Letting it stay for even a second longer would be a huge loss. After Hulk finished off everyone, he suddenly used a huge plate, high up, to engulf the mechanical dragon's body. A bolt of lightning struck the plate, and lightning, along with the plate, pierced through the mechanical dragon's body. 3 parts were cut off. This surge of power clearly damaged the mechanical dragon's internal energy. The dragon, now without power, immediately fell from the sky. A group of 2, including Jack and her, stood together, watching the mechanical dragon descend from the ground. Laughed. Hey, big head, what's the deal with our cooperation this time? Jack didn't answer, his expression still showing a hint of anger. Big head, don't you think so? Before could finish speaking, a large green iron object struck fiercely, sending him flying into the wall of an unknown location. What are you doing? You just attack without warning. What happened to our partnership? Standing inside the wall, was speechless. Seeing that Jack hadn't paid any attention to her, he immediately started moving. Hey, big guy, wait for me. Quickly got up from the ground. He possessed an incredibly strong divine body and wasn't affected by the attack thump, a muffled sound. Hulk suddenly appeared in front of Loki. Before Loki could even get up, Hulk crashed down like a tank, smashing through the air and sending Loki flying into the house. After Loki was knocked to the ground, Hulk gave him no chance to catch his breath, leaping up and slamming his fist into the ground as he charged forward. Loki, after receiving that punch, saw Hulk still relentlessly pursuing him and was filled with rage. Damn it! Who do you think you are? I am a god. You lowly human, trying to humiliate me. As he spoke, Loki's expression became particularly solemn, his aura of superiority and authority radiating the power of a supreme god king. But before he could finish his harsh words, the scene abruptly changed. Hulk grabbed Loki's right foot, lifting him up like a sandbag. With a mocking smile, Hulk, using Loki as a ragdoll, mercilessly pounded him repeatedly on the ground. The brutality was beyond description. The hard stone slab, under Loki's repeated pounding, shattered into countless pieces, leaving a spiderweb of cracks spreading in all directions. It was like a performance of tossing onions. The scene was quite comical. After countless repetitions, Hulk finally stopped. Loki was thrown into a pit, his arms tightly wrapped around himself, his eyes filled with terror. He looked utterly terrified, no, more accurately, as if he'd been beaten senseless. He stood there, frozen, like a mummy, his eyes lifeless and motionless. I, Loki, have been humiliated like this. I have no ability to resist. Jack looked at Loki on the ground and said, weak, too weak. What a weak god. Too pathetic. He then turned to leave. Loki, still in the pit, couldn't recover. Looks like you've dealt with Loki. Chen Feng arrived at the building and saw Jack walking out. That guy was too weak, Hulk replied calmly. Loki. Good on. Not weak. With this kind of weakling strength, he's not even a match for Jack, and far inferior to those Zetas. Go help the captain and the others first, I'll talk to this guy. With that, Chen Feng flashed into the building and arrived beside Loki, who was standing near the pit. Hey, you who call yourself the evil god of S.H.I.E.L.D, how could you be defeated by an Earthling? With this strength, you still want to rule the Earth? Hey, Chen Feng immediately opened his eyes. At the same time, Chen Feng's gaze swept around, but he didn't find any trace of power beside Loki. Suddenly, he had a bad feeling. Chen Feng lifted Loki from the ground, stared at him, and questioned, Loki, where's your power? I don't know anything about it. Loki was clearly furious, speaking slowly and deliberately. He really is a monster. Chen Feng stared at Loki and immediately threw him away. With such a monster, he couldn't find any trace of power. Hey, when you hit Loki, did you notice he was holding a weapon? Chen Feng immediately asked. Yes, I remember it was on his right hand. That's his most powerful weapon, and Loki always carries it with him, the Eye of the Demon replied. At this moment, Chen Feng fell into deep thought. Logically speaking, the scepter should definitely be with Loki. Even though the Hulk had just beaten him up, the scepter wouldn't have suddenly disappeared. Damn it. Who took the scepter? If I find out, I'll definitely punish him. Chen Feng's eyes narrowed, and he slammed his head against the table beside him. With a thud, it instantly turned into powder. Hey, Chen Feng, there are more and more enemies. You should come and help now. The Tesseract issue might have to wait. Roger's anxious voice came through the PUI communicator. The number of Chitauri entering through the gate was too large, and even Sue couldn't stop them. Therefore, the pressure on Rogers, Tony, and the others increased, and they were caught in a fierce battle. Consider yourself lucky, Loki. But you'd better find the scepter for me. You know, number 3 is the only point you can control. Chen Feng's words were threatening, and he suddenly entered the void, disappearing from Loki's sight. The scepter? Loki's eyes flashed with a sharp light because of Chen Feng's words. That's right. The scepter is my only hope. As long as I find the scepter and increase the energy of the cosmic cube, when all the Chitauri enter Earth, it will be victory. Forget about Souljack. Even Chen Feng can't defeat so many people. Thinking of this, Loki hurriedly started looking for the scepter. It was Loki, but he couldn't find the scepter so quickly. After all, it wasn't his weapon, but something given to him by the Astroman. Damn it! Who is it? Loki cried out in fear and anger, wishing he could not be calm. With a movement, Chen Feng flashed to the side of Saria and Rogers, and with a swing of his sword, the swift sword exploded. The sword energy that could destroy everything was ravaged by heaven and earth, and the Chitauri surrounding the two of them were all turned to ashes at this moment. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 82 Resistance. Take care of Tasha, I'm going somewhere else, Chen Feng said, and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The Ha region was teeming with Chitauri. They were everywhere, on the houses, on the ground, in the air, a dense, overwhelming presence. Chen Feng, countless enemies have gathered in the building to the southeast. Tony's heavy voice came from the other end of the communicator. He was currently trapped by the Chitauri and unable to escape, so he could only report the situation to the powerful and swift Chen Feng. Understood, Chen Feng nodded and leaped into the building crack. Suddenly, Chen Feng was completely encased in solid stone, like a stone giant, and charged into the building boom. The next moment, a deafening explosion rang out, and the entire building was reduced to a pile-up. All the Chitauri were killed. Chen Feng, another voice came from the northwest through the communicator. Chen Feng rushed over. At that moment, a small potion bottle appeared in his hand, emitting a faint scent. He then threw it forcefully into the huddled group of Chitauri. With a loud boom, thick blue smoke billowed out, instantly engulfing all the Chitauri. This was the most potent potion. Only the gold-wielding sorcerer, Singed, could concoct it. The frenzied Chen Feng was immediately targeted by the other Chitauri, who swarmed him like water. Suddenly, dark clouds gathered, obscuring the sky. The world darkened abruptly. HMPH, Chen Feng snorted coldly, unconcerned, a sly smile playing on his lips. Just as the endless horde of Chitauri was about to reach Chen Feng, a rift suddenly opened in the void, appearing abruptly before them. Turbulent currents erupted, a powerful void force emanated from it, and these weak Chitauri were completely unable to control their bodies, all being sucked into the void. In the blink of an eye, the void rift closed. In just 3 seconds, all the Chitauri in front of Chen Feng were swept away, leaving only a clear blue sky. Silence. Utter silence. The scene was deathly still. The entire place trembled. But even after killing so many Chitauri, more kept emerging from the gate. Thor swung Mjolnir with all his might, violent lightning roaring in the sky, killing countless Chitauri. Under such a terrifying offensive, it was like a drizzle to the Chitauri. They were completely unaffected by the sheer number of them. As Thor fought relentlessly, his energy was depleted, and his divine power was rapidly declining, his forehead covered in pale sweat. This can't go on, there are too many enemies, we must shut down the Tesseract, Roger said urgently. With just a few of them, they would eventually be exhausted and die from the endless Chitauri bacteria. Roger smashed the head of a Chitauri with his shield and asked anxiously, Chen Feng, have you found a way to shut down the cosmic cube? I have a way, but the necessary item is missing. Upon hearing this, Roger's expression darkened. We can't delay any longer, so this is the way it is. Now we can only rely on my power to forcibly shut down the cosmic cube. Chen Feng's eyes flickered. He had originally hoped to find the scepter, although it might take a long time, but in the current situation, there was clearly no extra time left for them. Helplessly, Chen Feng could only use the most direct and difficult method, using the power of the void to forcefully resist the power of the space stone. This is the only way for now. We will help you attract the Chitauri, so you can go and shut down the cosmic cube. A determined look flashed in Roger's eyes. Even if it meant sacrificing himself, he had to shut down the cosmic cube, otherwise not only the Union and the Mithril Islands, but the entire world, and even the entire Earth, would be plunged into a great crisis. Mind your own business, I won't give these guys another chance. Chen Feng leaped forward. In a few breaths, he arrived at the top of Stark Tower. Previously, when fighting the cosmic cube, he hadn't noticed these insects, which gave them an opportunity. But now, as long as Chen Feng was prepared, he wouldn't give them another chance. He slightly opened his eyes. The energy of the void stirred. A magic incantation was instantly uttered, and a semicircular energy shield enveloped Chen Feng in an instant. Not only that, but the power of time was also unleashed simultaneously. Anyone entering within tens of meters of Chen Feng would be bound by the powerful force of time, unable to move. At this moment, before Chen Feng could even make any preparations, an endless horde of Chitauri giants swarmed in, energy rays attacking from all directions. However, with the energy shield, these rays posed no threat to Chen Feng. I haven't even come looking for you, and you've already rushed up to your deaths. A hint of killing intent flashed in Chen Feng's eyes, and a chilling aura swept out from his body. The sky darkened. Above the heavens, a deafening roar erupted. A deep white dot, growing ever larger and closer, seemed to be a star hurtling towards them from the cosmos. Boom! A boulder crashed into the earth, slamming into the midst of the Chitauri. With a deafening explosion, a terrifying shockwave swept through, engulfing all the Chitauri in its energy. A starfall. This was the most powerful spell Chen Feng could now wield after mastering the arcane magic. Simultaneously with the annihilation of the Chitauri, Chen Feng had already set up the spell around himself. Now, any enemy approaching would first be blocked by the energy barrier, then their bodies would be immobilized by the power of time, and finally, an arcane star would descend from the sky, killing them all. Under this powerful magical incantation, all the Chitauri who dared to disturb Chen Feng were nothing more than cannon fodder. Chen Feng was undisturbed by the Chitauri, but the Avengers below were in dire straits, all locked in a fierce battle. The endless swarm of Chitauri surrounded Hulk, their relentless firepower completely overwhelming the powerful giant. Hulk killed one, only to have another arrive to replace him. This constant barrage meant that even with Hulk's abundant stamina, he couldn't withstand such relentless attacks. Soon, his strength began to wane. Seeing this, the Chitauri intensified their assault, unleashing even more firepower upon Hulk. Meanwhile, Thor was also surrounded by a massive number of Chitauri. The light above Thor dimmed, a testament to his diminishing power. At this point, Thor could only engage in hand-to-hand combat, relying on his incredibly strong body to withstand the Chitauri's relentless attacks. Only Tony, Rogers, and Natasha remained. Chapter 83 Shock. Under Chen Feng's magical protection, he wasn't under too much pressure. Hawkeye had already retreated from the high-rise, as all the arrows on his back were used up. Without his bow, Hawkeye's strength was greatly reduced. Staying on the high-rise would only make him a moving target. "Roger, help me," Tony flew over and shouted. Rogers immediately understood and aimed his shield at Tony. Rumble. Two massive beams of energy shot out from Tony's palm, rebounding from the shield and sweeping outwards in all directions, unstoppable. In an instant, most of the Chitauri were dealt with. "This won't do, Captain," Tasha threw her sharp blade, instantly killing a Chitauri. "I know, but Director Fury, I can't reach him, and I don't know what he's doing." Roger's expression was grave, understanding that they alone were no match for the endless Chitauri aliens. However, S.H.I.E.L.D was currently invisible, not a single person could be seen. Inside the conference room, Fury looked at the senators before him and said in a measured tone, "Sir, perhaps we could use nuclear weapons to wipe out all the Chitauri civilians in New York?" "Have they dispersed?" one senator immediately asked. "They've all been evacuated. New York is now a ghost town. For the sake of the entire New York area, we must make sacrifices," Fury said righteously, his tone full of ambiguity. Everyone fell silent. "Then let's do it this way, use nuclear weapons, and wipe out all these aliens." After a moment, all the senators nodded, agreeing with Fury's opinion. "Yes, S.H.I.E.L.D will definitely protect Earth." Fury's face was solemn, as serious as a proclamation. At this moment, the Avengers far away in the west had no idea that a nuclear bomb was about to fall on the west. Chen Feng once again mobilized the void power within his body, and his aura suddenly surged, sharp and magnificent, like a god descending, not inferior to Odin, the king of the gods. If it weren't for the fact that each hero could only equip 6 pieces of equipment, and that they couldn't be reused, Chen Feng's strength would probably have already reached an astonishing level. At that time, the space stone was just an ordinary stone in his eyes. After this battle is over, he must explore the possibility of this matter carefully. A hidden light flashed in Chen Feng's eyes, and his right hand directly passed through the energy barrier of the cosmic cube, slowly approaching the cosmic cube. The wind and clouds surged. The cosmic cube suddenly erupted with a turbulent aura, and the endless spatial power spread out from it, resisting Chen Feng's void power without the slightest weakness. The two were once again in a very stalemate. For a time, they could not determine the winner and were deadlocked. I refuse to believe it. This space stone is so powerful, it can't stop you, Chen Feng roared. He let out a howl, and a powerful, overwhelming force erupted from within him, pure energy, propelling his arm slowly closer. However, the space stone wouldn't surrender easily. The entire cosmic cube shone with a deep blue light, its terrifying spatial power impacting everything. The world seemed to lose its color. The two clashed again, like a local snake encountering a dragon, each attacking the other with all its might. Chen Feng, hurry up. The Chitauri are increasing in number, and we're about to be overwhelmed. Just then, Natasha's voice came through the communicator. Chen Feng's face immediately paled. He could tolerate the others, but Natasha was his woman, and he absolutely couldn't allow anything to happen to her. Even so, he couldn't manage both sides simultaneously. If he stopped halfway, it would only lead to a thankless task. But if he ignored Natasha and the others below, they might be wiped out by the endless Chitauri before he could even shut down the Tesseract. No. Absolutely not, Chen Feng couldn't help but curse inwardly. His mind raced. He had to find a way to resolve the current situation. Tony was shot down from the sky by the Chitauri, surrounded by a large group of soldiers. Captain Rogers, Thor, and the Hulk were all surrounded by the endless Chitauri, and could only rely on their last strength to fight them off. As for Natasha and the two could only hide beside others to ensure their relative safety. That's it. Finally, I have a way. A flash of inspiration struck Chen Feng, his face lighting up with joy. His stern expression relaxed. Just hold on a little longer, I'll summon my minions to deal with these Chitauri, Chen Feng notified everyone through the communicator. Minions, everyone was stunned, confused. They didn't realize that Chen Feng's minions could change the entire battle. While everyone was still processing this, Chen Feng entered the shop and decisively chose the Void Gate. This thing could open a portal to the void, summoning a large number of void creatures. Unfortunately, the shop only allowed one purchase at a time, otherwise, Chen Feng would have immediately set up 6 void gates. This was just the beginning. The next moment, Chen Feng stretched out his left hand and drew a line in the air, and another, even wider gate appeared. This was the ability of the Void Prophet Malzahar. From birth, Malzahar possessed a strong sense of the complexities and vicissitudes of fate, which led to unwelcome influences seeping into his subconscious. In his dreams, an evil spirit was summoning him, an unknown being from the void. Gradually, Malzahar could not resist this intense feeling and finally fell into the void, his entire body filled with the energy of the void. The earth will eventually disappear. The sun will eventually set. The Azure Palace will eventually fall. And they, without exception, will all come to this place. They are unknown creatures from the depths of the void. 2 gates opened simultaneously, and this world, along with the deepest region of the void, was filled with earth-shattering void power, and storms gathered. All the Chitauri were stunned. They were shocked by this immense power and turned their heads to look at the 2 void gates. At this moment, under the horrified gazes of everyone, several creatures of not very large size, like small insects, jumped out from the 2 void gates. But the power emanating from them made them impossible for anyone to underestimate. ZZZZZ. ZZZZZ. The void creatures emitted sharp sounds, as if suddenly locking onto a target, and swiftly charged towards the distant Chitauri like lightning. Just a few little bugs? Can they solve our current predicament? Thor looked at the somewhat cute void creatures, momentarily doubtful. They're not even enough to fill my teeth, Hulk chimed in. Everyone looked towards Chen Feng atop Stark Tower, their eyes filled with suspicion. But then, the next moment, everyone in Covenant, including Fury and the other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents on Mothership, were completely stunned. They were all dumbfounded by the sight before them, their mouths agape. A vast number of void creatures, like a burst dam, endlessly surged out from 2 void portals, like a raging torrent, seemingly about to engulf the entire Covenant. Chapter 84 approaching. Deeply shocked. Everyone was stunned. Sauron suddenly felt a stinging pain in his face and couldn't speak for a moment. What are you all standing there for? Quickly find a high point. Will we be submerged below? Rogers quickly commanded the group. In fact, before the void creatures could even react, everyone had reached a tall building. Looking down at the densely packed void creatures below, a chill ran down their spines. Perhaps because it was their first time emerging from the void, all the void creatures were extremely excited, which caused them not to attack the Chitauri for a moment. This scene lasted only a moment. The void creatures immediately locked onto their enemies, and with a burst of void power, they disappeared from the ground and rose into the sky. They pounced on the Chitauri, relentlessly attacking them. Perhaps because these void creatures were still too young, they didn't know many moves, only simple biting and the most basic use of void power. Wow. Oh my god, no way? Is my strength still too low to summon more powerful void creatures? Chen Feng covered his forehead, watching this scene that resembled children fighting, and found it rather cringe-worthy. Forget it. I'm not watching this kind of fight. It's really boring. But Rogers and the others, seeing these void creatures for the first time, were incredibly excited, watching with great interest. Everyone, let's go. Let's seize this opportunity and wipe out these Chitauri. Thor swung his hammer, Mjolnir, his red robes billowing, his fighting spirit soaring. With the help of the void creatures, the battle was instantly turned around. The Chitauri's numerical advantage vanished. You have more, I don't have less. The overwhelming Chitauri and the sky-filing void creatures stood side by side, forming two conspicuous dividing lines between heaven and earth. Chen Feng no longer paid attention to the other Avenger members, with the summoned void creatures aiding them. That was enough. Hulk. Magma. Without the Chitauri bacteria around him, Hulk unleashed the aesthetics of power and pure violence without restraint. He leaped into the arena, his fists raining down on the Chitauri. His immense strength instantly obliterated countless bodies, leaving a trail of corpses. Influenced by Hulk, the others charged into the enemy ranks, joining the void creatures to fight the Chitauri. The two forces clashed, blurring the lines between them, making it almost impossible to see anything. The sky and the ground echoed with a roar of impacts and explosions. Chen Feng, atop Stark Tower, let out a deep breath. The immense void power within him surged once more, bringing him one step closer to the cosmic cube. However, the cosmic cube was no pushover. Its latent energy, surging even more violently, erupted like a long-accumulated volcano, once again blocking Chen Feng's path. His right hand was once again blocked before the cosmic cube. This space stone is too difficult. Chen Feng narrowed his eyes, somewhat impatient, as his boundless energy erupted. His aura suddenly changed. A blazing sun appeared, towering above everything. It was as if a terrifying energy was being channeled from the depths of the void into Chen Feng's body. At this moment, Chen Feng seemed to have become a god of the void, wielding the power of the void at will. The special power released by the space stone was also firmly suppressed by the void power. If he could just hold on a little longer, he could definitely suppress the special power and shut down the cosmic cube. Gradually, the special energy connecting the gate, the newly decaying liquid, and the crack that was thousands of meters wide became only a few hundred meters wide. Over time, the number of Chitauri entering Earth decreased drastically. Damn it! Loki, cannot fail like this. I will not fail like this. Loki, still searching for the scepter in the high-rise, became even more frenzied after witnessing this scene. Unwilling. Truly unwilling. He already had people helping him. He had already gained such immense power, he absolutely could not allow himself to be defeated by these ants at this moment. Loki leaped and disappeared into the high-rise. A moment later, his figure appeared at the top of the Tower of Sodok. Loki looked at Chen Feng before him, his eyes blazing with boundless fury. I will not let you get away with this, Loki roared, a sharp blade suddenly appearing in his hand. He thrust it directly at Chen Feng, creating a whistling sound as if a cold light flashed. Just as Loki stepped into that area, he was imprisoned by the power of time, his gleaming blade instantly pinned down by the energy barrier. At the same time, a deafening roar echoed in the sky. A massive star fell from the heavens, striking Loki heavily. The immense air pressure and gravity severely injured Loki, causing him to collapse to the ground, his gaze fixed blankly on the sky, lost in thought. He was utterly defeated. He hadn't even touched Chen Feng's clothes, and he'd failed like this? Was he the most useless god in Skadi? Countless thoughts flashed through Loki's mind, his confidence severely shattered. A mage, insisting on using a machine for flesh, are you trying to get back at me? Chen Feng said coldly, seeing Loki lying on the ground, devoid of fighting spirit. After a great deal of effort, Chen Feng was finally close to the cosmic cube. Get up! Chen Feng pressed down on the cosmic cube with his palm, unleashing an astonishing surge of void power to suppress the space stone's power. The Space Stone is one of the 6 Infinity Stones, its abilities and power incredibly formidable. Otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted Thanos' attention. At this moment, under Chen Feng's void power, the spatial energy gradually stabilized. The next instant, Chen Feng pulled the Space Stone out, severing the energy reaction device. The crack in the sky above finally began to slowly close. Who launched the nuclear missile? Tony suddenly pointed and saw a nuclear missile rapidly approaching the city. His expression changed drastically. Tony immediately took flight, rushing towards the nuclear missile. What? Someone launched a nuclear missile at York? Roger's face darkened upon hearing this, his expression one of disbelief. What a joke. That was a Daluo-level ultimate weapon, a nuclear weapon. Although Roger had been frozen inside an iceberg before the end of the second Daluo continent, that didn't stop him from knowing the power of nuclear weapons. If this nuclear missile exploded in York, the entire city of York would be reduced to rubble. Looking across the entire Earth, who could withstand such a nuclear missile? Just the thought of it hitting them would be devastating. Needless to say, the future York would become a deserted island, a terrifying death zone filled with nuclear weapons, where no one would dare approach. I caught it, just as everyone was stunned. Tony arrived beneath the nuclear missile and caught it with both hands. Then, he rushed towards the still open gate at top speed. The only way to solve this problem now was to send the nuclear missile into space. Otherwise, if it remained in York, it would cause immeasurable damage to Earth. It's not something that can be recovered in just a few years, decades, or even centuries. Rogers, on the ground, watched Tony soar into the sky and shouted, "Tony, hurry. The gates are already slowly closing." Chapter 85 Reliable. If Tony runs out of energy halfway through, he might not return. Chen Feng, do you have a way to keep the door open for a while until Tony comes back? Rogers immediately thought of Chen Feng. Since the door was closed, it meant the Tesseract had been shut down, and Chen Feng's plan had succeeded. Open the door again, Chen Feng asked with a playful look in his eyes. Rogers couldn't immediately guess the meaning behind his words. Was it too troublesome? That would be terrible. But then, Chen Feng's casual remark completely baffled Rogers. That's too simple, Chen Feng chuckled. What? Open the spatial gate? It's that simple. At that moment, Rogers even doubted whether he had misheard. He was a little hard of hearing. Only Tasha looked at Rogers with complete confidence. She understood that if Chen Feng said that, he must have something to be sure of it. Natasha said reassuringly, "Captain, you don't need to worry. Since Chen Feng said he has a way, he definitely has a way. We have no other choice but to trust him." Chen Feng's strength was already deeply imprinted in Tasha's heart, and the two of them had been together for so long that they knew each other inside and out. Therefore, Natasha could guarantee it. If Chen Feng had said such a thing, then there would absolutely be no problem. Chen Feng, now that things have come to this, I have no choice but to trust you, Rogers nodded, a resolute determination welling up within him. I entrust this to you. Right now, it seems there's no one else here who can say for sure that they have the ability to open a spatial portal. Even Thor, the god of thunder, doesn't have the ability to traverse space. Otherwise, the Skargards wouldn't have needed the Bifrost to reach his world. Tony squeezed out the last bit of energy from his Iron Man suit, finally bursting out of the atmosphere and arriving in outer space. On the other side of the spatial portal lay the Chitauri's massive colony, their thousands upon thousands of miles of spaceships, a terrifying and daunting sight. Tony didn't know how many Chitauri were among them, but if they were allowed to continue pouring in, everything on Earth would be overrun. Go to hell, you insects! Tony's eyes blazed with madness as he released his grip on the nuclear missile. Following its trajectory, the nuclear missile hurtled straight towards the Chitauri's spaceship. The next moment, fireworks burst forth. A deafening explosion rang out, and the Chitauri's spaceship shattered, completely obliterated. A terrifying shockwave swept through, destroying everything in its path. Tony's Iron Man suit, its energy completely depleted, lost power. Tony himself, having spent too much time in outer space, gradually succumbed to oxygen deprivation and lost consciousness. He unconsciously plummeted towards Earth, the portal about to close. Given Tony's size, it seemed impossible for him to pass through this portal and enter Earth. Just then, a beam of azure energy suddenly appeared, tearing open the closing portal slightly. Tony's body passed through the widened portal and fell to Earth. Wow, the power of the Space Stone is truly amazing, Chen Feng couldn't help but exclaim as he looked at Tony, who had entered Earth. After using his void power to suppress the space stone, he clearly felt that he had gained some control over it. Moreover, the power of space and the power of the void are almost identical, belonging to the same category of abilities. Although they compete with each other, they can also tolerate each other. This is why Chen Feng was able to unleash some of the space stone's power after gaining some control over it. Chen Feng, he really didn't lie to me. Roger stared at Chen Feng, who was far away on Stark Tower, and couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. This person is simply too strong, like a god. So strong that it's unfathomable, and no one knows where his limits are. No wonder even Fury wanted to recruit Chen Feng and have him join the Avengers. Hulk leaped high from the ground and instantly arrived beside Tony, bringing him back. If Tony, unconscious, were allowed to free fall from tens of thousands of meters, his fate would be obvious. He'd be smashed to pieces, reduced to a bloody pulp. Meanwhile, the Chitauri remaining in the territory were left alone, weak, pitiful, and helpless. The void creatures wouldn't let these enemies go so easily. They swiftly wiped out the last remaining Chitauri. Come back. Chen Feng released his void power, summoning all the void creatures back into the void. The enemies were dealt with. Releasing them back into the territory would inevitably cause a disturbance no less than that caused by the Chitauri. Tisk, let's go see our hero. How's Tony? Chen Feng muttered to himself. After summoning all the void creatures, Chen Feng descended directly from Stark Tower. Tony lay on the ground, his helmet open beside him. Everyone's expression was different, but the one thing they all shared was grief. The Tony before them was no longer breathing, radiating an aura of death. Hey, Hulk, what's all this nonsense? We've already won. Chen Feng finally came to the group's side and asked, somewhat puzzled. It wasn't until he saw Tony lying dead on the ground that Chen Feng understood. Hulk, help Tony? Chen Feng pointed at Hulk. Hulk looked at him with a blank expression. He's dead. How can I teach him? I'm not the ruler of hell. I don't have the power to bring the dead back to life. Just yell at him, that'll be enough. Chen Feng's expression was somewhat helpless. Looking at Chen Feng's determined eyes, for some reason, Hulk did as he was told. A roar, a deafening shout, rang out, almost piercing everyone's eardrums. Fortunately, Chen Feng plugged Tasha's ears in time, preventing her from being frightened. But the others were completely dumbfounded. They were here to suffer. Oha! Tony on the ground suddenly gasped violently, his head curving like a snail. He exhaled a deep breath. Tony opened his eyes wide in bewilderment. Tony, are you alright? Rogers rushed over, catching Tony's arm and asking with concern. Having just saved the world, Rogers had long since put aside past grudges. Now Tony was the ruler of the world, and his actions deserved respect. Phew. I suddenly have a craving for steak at the nearby kebab shop. Tony laughed, looking at the people around him, and said something completely unrelated. Chen Feng, Rogers, everyone stared blankly at Tony, utterly bewildered. Seriously, you just escaped death, and the first thing you think of is food? We thought you'd say something incredibly touching, but this is so disappointing. You see, after his first harrowing escape from the Middle East, the first thing Tony thought of was a delicious hamburger. Clearly, after such a thrilling adventure, Tony's first thought was hunger. Alright then, tonight we'll go to the nearby kebab shop and try the steak you mentioned. Chen Feng readily agreed. In this struggle, he was the most relaxed one. His strength was undeniable. No one present could argue with that. The crowd was speechless. The battle was utterly silent. The Tesseract was defeated, and the Chitauri's giant fungus was also defeated in outer space. It could be said that Loki's conspiracy was completely shattered, and his plan to invade Earth was utterly foiled. For Chen Feng, there was something even more important. He now possessed the Tesseract. The power of the Void, its control over the Tesseract, and the relationship between the two were all of the same kind of ability. Even after only a short time, he was already at this level. Given more time, Chen Feng would undoubtedly be able to better control the Tesseract's energy. However, Chen Feng currently lacked a weapon capable of equipping the Space Stone. Otherwise, he would have already crushed the Tesseract and extracted the Space Stone, just like Thanos later. Wielding an Infinity Gauntlet forged by dwarves, he collected Infinity Stones everywhere, becoming the overlord of the Marvel Universe. What Galactus, what living tribunal, what cosmic deity. All of them with a snap of his fingers, let them kneel down and call him daddy, singing conquer. The power of the 6 Infinity Stones is absolutely beyond everyone's imagination. Randomly annihilating half of all life in the universe, ignoring your strength, all beings are equal. If there were a heart of the universe, it would be even more terrifying. After pondering for a moment, Chen Feng already had an idea in mind: collect the other 5 Infinity Stones, and then find a weapon that could equip them. Tony, get up. Weren't you going to the Arabian kebab restaurant? What are you still lying here for? Chen Feng glanced at the Manhattan area, which was almost turned into a wasteland, and didn't want to stay here any longer. The dust everywhere and the nauseating smell were too pungent. Chen Feng didn't want to stay a moment longer. Don't tell me that the Arabian kebab restaurant is in this area? Chen Feng glanced around, quickly sizing up Tony with sharp eyes. Nearby? You must be out of your mind. This whole area has become a wasteland. No matter what kind of restaurants, parks, buildings, or famous companies were there before, they were all destroyed in this great battle. How could that be? If it were here, I wouldn't have mentioned it to you. I'm actually glad it's not here, Tony replied with a resentful look. Obviously, Chen Feng's suspicion was somewhat dissatisfied. Don't you trust me that much? Am I not reliable? If Chen Feng knew what Tony was thinking, he would definitely nod. Not only do you not trust me, you're too unreliable. Okay, everyone, let's discuss the barbecue later. I just want to go back and take a good shower and then have a good sleep. Zhang Pisha stretched her arms and legs, her brows full of fatigue. This fight has really exhausted me. I'll go with you. Chen Feng raised a lewd smile and walked directly to Tasha's side, taking her hand. This scene immediately made Zhou Chu and the others look disgusted. Please. When everyone is here, don't show off your love, okay? It's like you don't even have a girlfriend yet? But thinking about it carefully, apart from Xiang Yan and Tony having lovers, Roger's lover was over 90 years old, dying in her hospital bed, and Banner's girlfriend, Bei, had already passed away. Moreover, Ross was standing in their way. There really were 2 men here without girlfriends. For a moment, both Rogers and Banner felt a pang of sadness. A chill runs down my spine, they thought. Stark Tower is a mangled mess. I'll go ahead and deal with the aftermath. Tony activated the backup power in his Iron Man suit and flew to Stark Tower. Chapter 86, Taking the Blame. I'm heading back to the helicarrier now to report the situation to Director Fury. I'm leaving now too, Rogers said hastily. Captain, wait a minute, I'll go back with you, Xiang Yan called out from behind Rogers, quickly chasing after him. I'm going to find Loki. Hulk wants some peace and quiet. Thor and Hulk then sped off in different directions. At this point, only Chen Feng and Natasha remained, as if something terrifying was there, and everyone avoided it like the plague. Don't forget the Arabian kebab tomorrow. Before everyone had gone too far, Chen Feng suddenly said, My knight, let's go home and bathe together. I need you to give me a good massage today, I'm so tired. Natasha leaned heavily on Chen Feng's shoulder, breathing into his ear. Chen Feng was somewhat surprised. When did this charming little vixen learn to be so seductive? I'll deal with you when we get home. Chen Feng reached out and grabbed at the air, and as if grasping at cloth, a rift suddenly appeared, revealing a deep void radiating a powerful aura. Chen Feng, holding Tasha's hand, stepped into it. The next moment, the two arrived at Chen Feng's house. Fortunately, Queens was some distance from Manhattan Plaza, and the Chitauri had been kept at bay by Mo Yi in Manhattan, so Queens remained undamaged. The two flashed directly into the bathroom. Night gradually fell, and the weather grew colder, but the temperature inside the bathroom slowly rose. On the helicarrier, Rogers, his face grim, stared intently at Fury and demanded, Why did you launch a nuclear missile at Korea? Don't you know that once it explodes, the entire Korea will become a no-man's land, a desolate wasteland? Fury's eyes remained calm as he looked at the already sloping Manhattan area on the screen and said indifferently, If we hadn't launched this nuclear missile, Korea would have been occupied by the Chitauri. Then, not only Korea, but Korea, the world, and even the entire Earth would have been occupied by aliens. Loki would rule the Earth. Sometimes, for the greater good, we must sacrifice the individual, sacrifice a part of it, to ensure the safety of the entire Earth. Captain, Rogers, still angry after hearing Fury's explanation, retorted without hesitation, You saw it yourself, we dealt with the Chitauri, and we didn't even need your nuclear missile help. We defeated Loki and drove the Chitauri off Earth. You must admit your mistake, Director Fury. Otherwise, what was the purpose of gathering us here? To draw fire? Rogers' sarcastic remarks silenced Fury. The situation was undeniably urgent. Fury, for the greater good, chose to launch a nuclear missile, sacrificing the city of Jose to completely eliminate the Chitauri bacteria. The argument between Fury and Rogers continued until nightfall, when they finally calmed down. In short, Rogers was furious at Fury for launching the nuclear missile without informing them, but Fury's explanation made him somewhat forgiving. He said he was angry, but inwardly he forgave. The situation was indeed critical. They were all at a disadvantage, and after repeated battles, everyone's physical and mental strength was nearing its limit. If Chen Feng hadn't summoned those void creatures to join the fight, the Chitauri bacterium might have pressed in and won the battle. The ending would have been completely different. Jose would have fallen. Migration would have fallen. And then the whole world would have fallen. It's unimaginable what kind of apocalypse that would have occurred. Regardless, Rogers' unwavering sense of justice wouldn't allow Fury to sacrifice the entire city to protect Metropolis, or even the entire Earth. Rogers firmly believed in one principle: there's always a solution until the very last moment. After their unpleasant parting, Thor, along with Loki, arrived at the helicarrier and imprisoned Loki. The defenses were at least more stringent and tighter than before. Without the Tesseract and with the Bifrost broken, Thor couldn't return to Asgard. He could only wait until Chen Feng arrived tomorrow to make further plans. However, personally taking the Tesseract back to Asgard from Chen Feng seemed like a difficult task, particularly troublesome. Thinking of this, Thor's heart throbbed with pain. Meanwhile, back at Stark Tower, Tony, looking at the dilapidated building before him, instantly turned pale, inwardly cursing, "Damn it! This is too much. This battle has shattered all his hard work of the past few months." Back to square one, even though he was the richest tycoon in the region, his heart was bleeding with anger. He was incredibly angry. That damned Loki. That bastard. He's my nemesis. Tony roared, trying to vent his rage. After a long while, he took off his Mark VI armor, sat on the tattered sofa, stared blankly at the wolf-shaped floor in front of him, and finally slumped down. He'd just walked the edge of death today. He'd better get some sleep first. The next day, all the Avengers gathered at the Arabian barbecue restaurant. Chen Feng originally wanted to bring Mindy along, but Tasha stopped him. After all, it involved matters from above. For Mindy, it was too early and too dangerous. However, Chen Feng had another, grander idea in mind, but it could only be implemented after Mindy came of age. "Tony, the barbecue here at Siri suits my taste. You know, I've tried Chen Feng's cooking before, don't disappoint me." Sat down, holding a fork like a bunch of thugs. "Huh? Chen Feng's cooking is really that good?" Rogers glanced at Chen Feng, his eyes full of doubt. This old man, who had just awakened from his slumber, naturally had no chance to taste Ye Shen's cooking. "Of course. Captain, believe me, once you've tasted Chen Feng's food, you'll absolutely love it. The first time I came to Earth, I was shocked by his exquisite skills. I never imagined there could be food on other planets even more delicious than home." Thor reminisced about the past, praising him endlessly. "Thor, you can fall in love with my gardening, just don't fall in love with me. I don't care about your sexual orientation, but mine is absolutely normal." Chen Feng, hearing the slightly distorted meaning in Thor's words, immediately stepped in to defend himself. Thor was somewhat exasperated, and hurriedly said, "Chen Feng, what are you saying? Don't be so narcissistic. Everyone knows Jane Fords is my girlfriend. Don't slander me here. I'm Asgard's #1 straight man. Straighter than a steel bar, what do you think?" Chen Feng smiled, his hand trembling slightly. "I was just explaining casually. Your agitation makes it easy for others to believe it." Thor's face darkened further. He was about to retort when Tony stopped him. "We're here to eat meat, not to discuss whether you're gay. Besides, the barbecue here is definitely no worse than Chen Feng's. That's what the culinary master Happy told me personally." Tony said confidently, crossing his legs as he sat down. "Really? I'm really looking forward to it." Chen Feng glanced at the crowded restaurant, a hint of anticipation rising in his heart. "Hearing you say that, I'm going to try it and see what makes this Arabian barbecue restaurant so appealing." Rogers looked curiously at the front hall, his eyes gleaming with longing. The others' appetites were whetted, their mouths watering. No one can resist delicious food. Before long, a large plate of Arabian barbecue was served. "This tastes good," Tasha sniffed, also feeling a bit surprised. If things continued this way, the food would definitely taste amazing. But whether it could reach Chen Feng's level, they'd have to taste it to know. I won't be polite. Thor forked a large piece of roast meat and wolfed it down. But suddenly his movements froze, his expression changed drastically, his furry eyes narrowed, and he quickly bent down, spitting out all the meat. WWTF. This is culinary horror. Tony, what kind of crap are you introducing? This isn't roast meat, it's not even as good as Asgardian insects. Thor angrily rebuked. Damn it, his expectations were dashed, and his tongue was stuck too. Is it really that bad? Tony picked up another piece of roast meat, looking at Thor suspiciously. Could it be that you're trying to trick me? Everyone should try it, maybe the local flavor isn't suitable for an Asgardian like me. Tony gestured for the others to try it too. Rogers and Hawkeye, feeling awkward about refusing Tony's offer, each picked up another piece of roast meat and put it in. Damn it, Tony, are you even here? Hawkeye had just taken a bite of the roast meat when he instantly frowned, looking pained, and questioned with a dark expression. Tony, this recommendation of yours is terrible. It's not even as good as the milk and bread I ate during the war. Rogers, on the other hand, liked it a lot, but he didn't like the taste either. Sherlock. It's all that damn Happy's fault. Tony spat out the roast meat in his mouth, immediately shifting the blame to Happy. With him not around, he was the perfect scapegoat. Tasha breathed a deep sigh of relief. Thankfully, Chen Feng had pulled her back in time. What's going on, Tony? Is this the food you were talking about that's comparable to Chen Feng minis? It's worse than the lowest quality food in Asgard, Thor exclaimed, turning to Dr. Banner, who was still happily munching on the meat. Damn it. Banner, how can you eat this tasteless roast meat? Banner looked up somewhat embarrassedly, giving an awkward smile. Mainly because he had been living in India, in the slums, where the food was even worse than this roast meat. Compared to that, this Arabian roast meat was still acceptable. Tony, in the name of the warriors of Asgard, I hereby issue the most severe punishment to you. Thor suddenly stood up, lightning crackling on his hammer, Mjolnir, pointing directly at Tony. Tony said helplessly, hey big guy, Happy sent me here. I was actually tricked, okay? When we get back, we'll definitely have to punish Happy properly. He calls himself a roast meat expert, damn. Is this all he's capable of? Chapter 87 Powerful. Can you even call this Arabian kebab restaurant delicious? They're ripping me off, sneered, unconcerned, instead accusing, don't shift the blame. It was you who insisted on coming. Tony, enraged, slapped his hand. Thor, this is Earth, not Asgard. Besides, I paid for this meal. I can do whatever I want. The group from the surrounding area watched Tony and argue like children, their faces filled with exasperation and headaches. Hey you two, Chen Feng suggested, why don't you go outside and have a fight? I think in your Asgardian tradition, there should be warriors fighting on a platform, Iron Man versus Thor, the clash between the Mark VI and Thor's hammer, that would be spectacular. We Asgard don't have that tradition. Thor scratched his head, then seemed to realize something and suddenly jumped up. Wait, One Leaf God, are you saying that all the warriors of Asgard are wild children who solve problems with their heads? Thor's mind went blank for a moment. Only then did he understand the meaning behind Chen Feng's words and felt that he had been mocked. Although Asgard still followed the Taoist dynasty system and used ancient spears as weapons, it did not mean that it was a feudal imperial region. In fact, Asgard was the most powerful force in the Nine Realms, far surpassing Earth's technological level. Chen Feng, I challenge you to a duel, Thor declared, his fighting spirit blazing. Tony, Natasha, everyone, upon hearing this, everyone was stunned, their eyes wide with disbelief as they stared at the two before them. A duel? No one expected Thor to say such a thing. Chen Feng's strength was undeniable, as demonstrated in the recent Covenant battle. He was capable of withstanding the Chitauri giants and suppressing the Tesseract. Even the Asgardian God King couldn't do that. Although Thor was no pushover, and his Mjolnir was earth-shattering, capable of summoning endless lightning, he had already been defeated by Chen Feng once in New Mexico. To challenge him again meant either Thor's strength had greatly improved, or he was simply being reckless and showing off. Everyone was pessimistic about the fight. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? You really want to challenge me? Chen Feng wore an expression as if he were looking at an idiot. That's right, I challenge you to a duel, so, his eyes gleaming, said directly to Chen Feng. Clap. I admire your courage, Soul. Go ahead, let us see your valiant figure. Tony clapped from the side, his expression unreadable. He seemed to have something else in mind. Perhaps it's better not to. The area was already a mess yesterday. If you two fight again today, this area will probably turn into hell. Rogers shook his head, uninterested in the duel between the two. Okay, 2 votes, 1 in favor, 1 against, that leaves 3 of us. I'm Xiantong, what about you two? Tasha became the referee in charge of the duel. It has to be said, the city knows how to play. Tang Yan pointed at the other former members of the group in the hall and objected. I object. The captain makes a good point. There are many people here now. If we offend them, it won't have a good impact. Sure enough, Yan had been on Roger's side from the beginning, a loyal and capable follower. Dr. Banner, what about you? Tasha looked at Dr. Banner and asked. I'm in favor. Banner put the roasted meat in his mouth and continued eating. Okay, 3-2 votes. You two can go outside and duel. Zheng. Tasha smiled sweetly at Chen Feng and Thor, her beautiful eyes sparkling. At this moment, Rogers walked to Thor and Chen Feng with a serious expression, saying, the duel is fine, but you must guarantee that it will not cause any harm to the civilians here, otherwise this match will be terminated immediately. Chen Feng looked at the serious-faced Rogers and shrugged. No problem, I will finish Thor in 1 move, and there will be no problem. This statement is too arrogant. Finish Thor in 1 move. Who do you think you are? It's too much of a target of hatred. Thor's expression was very displeased. I admit that you, Chen Feng, are very powerful, but even his father Odin would not easily say that he could finish me in 1 move. Chen Feng, last time I lost to you, that was only because I had obtained Thor's hammer and mastered the power of Thor. The current me is completely different from that time. Don't underestimate me, or I'll make things very difficult for you. You little brat, you're quite tough. A scholar should be looked at with new eyes after 3 days' absence. Is that what you mean? Chen Feng narrowed his eyes, a meaningful smile playing on his lips, before walking away. Thor shivered, a chill running down his spine for some reason. It was as if something had somehow touched him. Don't underestimate me. I am Odin's son, Thor. Thor quickly calmed down and angrily followed, his hammer flashing with dazzling lightning, illuminating the entire restaurant. Not long after the words were spoken, the guests in the surrounding area were all stunned by this scene. It was like a still scene. Silence. The entire place was silent. Sherlock, Sewer, can you please stop being so ostentatious? Rogers muttered to himself with a wry smile. Having chosen their dual location, Chen Feng and Sewer stood on opposite sides, facing each other. Their auras suddenly shifted, as if they could pierce through the heavens and earth. Tony, Banner, and Tasha watched the two intently, eagerly anticipating the upcoming duel. Only Rogers and the Demon Eye watched them with serious expressions, a hint of worry flashing in their eyes, fearing they might wreak havoc on the area. Sewer moved first. A long after-image trailed behind him as he appeared beside Chen Feng in the blink of an eye. He was surrounded by endless lightning, crackling and popping. A deafening roar echoed as Thor's hammer tore through the air, the entire space crackling with lightning. Chen Feng smiled, opening his palm. Intense lightning flashed, like the brightest star in the night, attracting everyone's attention. This tiny star, in the blink of an eye, magnified countless times, seemingly as if it could unleash a raging inferno, engulfing everything in its path. That same move again? Do you think I'll lose to you again? R's heart sank, recalling how Chen Feng had used this very move to defeat him not long ago. Thunder God, 50 thunderbolts. But this time, I will definitely surpass you. A sudden burst of light erupted from Thunder God, illuminating the entire sky as if the sun had been drawn closer to Earth, a terrifying sight. I possess a thunderbolt that can shatter all laws. The thunderbolt in Chen Feng's hand slowly condensed, compressing from its original size of several hundred meters into an arc of electricity only about 50 meters long. This short bolt of lightning possessed power no less than Thor's overwhelming power. Boom! A deafening explosion resounded in the sky. All the lightning converged on Thor's hammer, creating a spectacular display that shook heaven and earth, and crashed towards Chen Feng. However, Chen Feng's calm was like still water, without a ripple. Sizzle! An explosion occurred. The arc of electricity in his hand collided with Thor's hammer. Boom! In that instant, a deafening roar erupted, and a powerful, boundless shockwave swept outwards. It only expanded outwards by 10 meters. Immediately, it was pulled into the void by an invisible yet terrifying force, swallowed up without causing any damage. The two bolts of lightning clashed, like two fierce dragons biting each other. For a moment, They were locked in a stalemate. Due to the presence of the void's power, the lightning from the thousand hooks didn't affect other areas. Instead, it crackled and flashed continuously around S.H.I.E.L.D and Chen Feng. It was earth-shattering. Their strength had indeed increased considerably. Chen Feng looked at S.H.I.E.L.D, who was fighting him quite well, and a slight smile appeared on his lips. He was reluctant. In the next second, Chen Feng's eyes turned cold, as if he had become a different person. Space trembled, and time around Thor seemed to be controlled. The flashing lightning, like a slow-motion scene, entered Chen Feng's eyes. Chen Feng's figure flashed, rushing forward, his agile movements constantly weaving through the dense lightning, and he arrived in front of Thor in a few breaths. Zanger was startled. At this moment, the expression on his face also appeared slowly, frame by frame. You think they will win? Banner looked at Tony beside him. Who knows? Chen Feng is quite strong, but if I can take him down, or better yet, if it's a draw, that's the outcome I'd most like to see, Tony said casually. Who it is doesn't matter, it's none of my business anyway. But if both of them lose and fight fiercely, that would be quite entertaining. Tony has bad memories of both Thor and Chen Feng. He'd love to see them make a fool of themselves, he'd enjoy it. Do you think my man will lose to Thor? Zhang Tasha's lips curled into a confident, charming smile, her expression full of conviction. She had confidence in her man's abilities. Judging from the current situation, Chen Feng has a better chance, and he had defeated Thor before, but I still hope they don't get hurt, and even more so, that it doesn't harm nearby civilians. Rogers couldn't stop talking about civilians. The veterans from the Second World War era really do think differently from the others. It was almost over. Hawkeye looked up at the fading light, a glint of light flashing in his eyes. Everyone responded, turning their gazes upwards. The lightning in the sky dissipated. The blinding light dimmed. Two figures appeared before them. Chen Feng held a lightning-infused spear, aimed directly at Thor's neck, radiating unimaginable energy fluctuations that caused the people below to gasp. Strong. Too strong. Everyone felt utterly powerless. Thor, a layer of cold sweat breaking out on his forehead, felt a lingering fear, and stammered, I lost. The flickering arcs of electricity contained terrifying power. Thor felt utterly inferior, his heart sinking to the bottom. Chapter 88 Experiment. If that hit me, even with a strong divine body, I'd probably feel terrible. Why didn't you just say so earlier? Chen Feng chuckled. Thor breathed a sigh of relief, but seeing Chen Feng's strange smile, he had a feeling something bad was about to happen. Sure enough. As the lightning spear was being retracted, an arc of electricity suddenly leaped out and struck Thor's face heavily. Zzzzz. 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 Thor's hair stood on end, making him look like a human hedgehog. Sorry, my hand slipped, Chen Feng said. Although he said that, his tone was insincere, clearly indicating he had done it on purpose. Chen Feng Thor muttered resentfully, his face showing more helplessness. He'd already said it, without evidence, no one could help him. Even if he was angry, he knew he couldn't beat Chen Feng. Damn it. I'm supposed to be a god, and the thought of how awkward and helpless I feel in front of Chen Feng, a human, is infuriating. And Tony, I heard everything you just said. Chen Feng's devilish voice suddenly rang in Tony's ear. Ahem, Chen Feng, you know me, I was just joking, trying to lighten the mood. Actually, I'd love for both of you to be safe and sound, Tony coughed and hurriedly explained, flashing a fawning smile. Holy crap. How can this guy have such sharp ears? I don't want to end up like Thor, turned into a charred mess by lightning. A crackling arc of electricity flickered between Chen Feng's fingers, radiating brilliant light. He sneered, really? With your personality, do you think I'd believe you? Chen Feng, we've known each other for so long, don't you know my character? Of course you should believe me, we have a deep friendship. Tony's expression changed drastically, and he quickly took a step back, moving slightly closer to Banner. Right now, only Hulk was barely capable of holding Chen Feng back. Rogers couldn't hold back any longer and finally intervened to stop Chen Feng's aggressive advances. This duel is over. Let's prepare to send Loki and Thor back to Asgard. You two can settle your differences later in a private place. What? A private place? Later? Holy crap, hearing those words, Tony was struck dumb, frozen in place. Damn it. Isn't this going to kill me? No way. Absolutely not. I must avoid Chen Feng from now on. Staying in his private space with him. Tony can already imagine the consequences. The pain, unimaginable pain. Captain, how about we settle our conflict with Chen Feng here? Maybe we'll forget about it later. You can be witnesses, isn't that great? Tony hooked his arm around Roger's shoulder, a bright smile on his face. His attitude was like that of a close brother. It depends on Chen Feng. I don't have the authority to decide this. Didn't you always emphasize human rights and freedom to me? I'm doing what you said before. Roger pulled his arm away, looking resigned. Tony, don't worry, I've memorized this. I won't forget. The captain is right. We'll discuss this later. Chen Feng walked straight towards Sue, leaving Tony filled with regret. Damn it. Why did I do that? Why did I have to be so reckless? Tony wanted to cry but had no tears. Standing there blankly, contemplating life, Banner walked past Tony, patted him on the shoulder, and sighed. Tasha also passed by Tony and whispered, "Good luck." She glanced at Tony, who had already given up, nodded, and remained silent. This was definitely Tony Stark's darkest day. After a short rest, the electricity in Thor's body had almost completely recovered. With his divine body, this injury was nothing. What he felt more was powerlessness, a deep sense of powerlessness. Defeated twice by the same person, using the same moves twice. Anyone would feel a deep sense of injustice and pain, let alone a strong-willed Asgardian warrior like Thor. Thor, weren't you in a hurry to bring Loki back to Asgard? Perfect timing, we've already communicated with the higher-ups, you can leave now, Rogers instructed. Wait, Thor suddenly sensed something was wrong. They just picked me up, and now they're sending me back to Asgard? Is this even possible? They're practically kicking me to the curb. Okay, what about Loki? Thor hesitated for a moment, then agreed. Indeed, he needed to get back to Asgard quickly. His father, Ryoma, couldn't wait any longer. After all, Odin had used all his power to send Thor to Earth, and now Asgard's defenses were at rock bottom. If Thor delayed even a second, something drastic could happen on the other side. As for Loki, I've already had Director Fury bring him over, he should arrive in about a minute. Rogers gazed at the distant sky, awaiting the arrival of Fred and Loki. I understand. Thor glanced sideways at the stunned Tony. By the way, Tony, is he alright? Chen Feng changed the subject, shamelessly explaining to Thor, he's fine, probably contemplating life. You know, scientists like him always have a lot of ideas popping into their heads, what we usually call a flash of inspiration. He's probably thinking about something important right now. Banner, Rogers, and Hawkeye rolled their eyes, their faces showing an "I believe you, I'm your little devil" expression. Go away. This is too ridiculous. Chen Feng can even make white seem black, I see. Scientists' minds are indeed a bit scary. Dr. Banner, do you sometimes act like this? Thor suddenly turned around and asked Banner. Banner didn't know how to answer him for a moment, caught in a dilemma, and fell into deep thought. They're happy, in this tense atmosphere. Roger's eyes lit up, and he replied. At this moment, an F-35 fighter jet descended from the sky, landing in front of everyone. Fury, carrying the handcuffed Loki, disembarked and went to Thor's side. Fury pushed Loki next to Thor, his expression solemn, and said, "This bastard is in your hands. Don't let him escape Asgard again and endanger our planet, or you won't get such good treatment next time. This time I'll keep a close eye on him and never let him leave Asgard again." Thor nodded, then suddenly remembered something very important. Hey Chen Feng, could I take the Tesseract back with me? Otherwise, we can't return to Asgard. Thor hesitated, reaching out to take the Tesseract. Having just been thoroughly humiliated by Chen Feng, a sliver of fear had settled in Thor's heart. If he weren't so weak, Thor wouldn't care who Chen Feng was. He might have yelled at Chen Feng, forcefully taking the Tesseract, and left. Without the Tesseract, they couldn't return to Asgard. That was a real problem. Chen Feng stroked his chin. Alright, I'll reluctantly kneel down and open a passage to Asgard to send them back. Chen Feng, can I take the Tesseract with me? Thor asked again. Sorry, the Tesseract is forbidden to trade. Even if you trade it for Thor's hammer, it's not an option. Chen Feng refused without hesitation. Chen Feng, you should hand over the Tesseract to me. It'll be too dangerous to leave it on Earth. You need to understand that Loki's invasion of Earth with its Chitauri wasn't just a one-man operation. There's another powerful force supporting him. The person behind Loki must be after the Tesseract, but for some reason, they can't come to Earth, so they sent Loki instead. The Tesseract is powerful, but the dangers it harbors are far beyond what you, the migration zone, or even the entire Earth can withstand. Thor remained relentless, his gaze fixed on Chen Feng, speaking earnestly. He wasn't just doing this for himself, or just for Asgard, but for the entire Earth. Hearing Thor's heartfelt words, Director Fury wavered slightly, looking at Chen Feng and saying, "Chen Feng, why don't you give the Tesseract to Thor and let him take it back to Asgard for safekeeping?" The second phase of S.H.I.E.L.D is still in the experimental stage, and there's still a long way to go before it's fully realized. For the foreseeable future, let's avoid causing trouble and absolutely refrain from attracting aliens. Chen Feng, I also agree with Thor, Asgard is better positioned to protect the Tesseract than Earth. Rogers advised from the side. Compared to Chen Feng's strength, Captain Mew was more concerned about whether the people of Earth could be guaranteed safety. Asgard is stronger? Can they protect the Tesseract? Chen Feng couldn't help but scoff. Fury, Captain, have you forgotten who repelled Odin when he attacked last time? Chen Feng's disdainful tone immediately stunned them, recalling their memories of New Mexico. There was a dashing man, standing tall in the world with his sword, his aura overwhelming all enemies. One strike from him was enough to fight against all germs. Enough to suppress gods and demons. Enough to shatter heaven and earth. He was a great swordsman, a sword immortal who killed everything, or perhaps a sword god from the depths of the distant universe, the most skilled swordsman in the universe. At this moment, everyone's eyes as they looked at Chen Feng seemed to see a sharp sword drawn from its sheath, piercing their hearts. Powerful. Invincible. This was an aura of dominance that looked down on everything. Standing above all living beings, overlooking the heavens and earth. The entire audience stirred. Silence. Rogers, Director Fury, and everyone else fell silent, not uttering a word. Now, do you still think I'm not qualified to keep the Tesseract? Chen Feng raised an eyebrow, his calm tone filled with an undeniable domineering air. This was supreme authority, an unyielding dignity that brooked no argument or refusal. A minute passed before everyone came to their senses. I'll open a special gate for you, take Loki back, Chen Feng said directly. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 89, Extended. A surge of void energy materialized in his palm, followed by a beam of light that seemed to reach the heavens and earth, landing beside Thor. Thor, with Loki in tow, stepped into the beam, then suddenly turned and asked, "What if something happens later? How will I get back to Earth?" "I'll take care of everything, so you don't need to worry." Chen Feng walked to Thor's side, placing a wooden token in his palm. Thor took the token, clutched it tightly, and his figure slowly disappeared into the beam. "If Earth is in danger, notify me immediately," his final words echoed from within the beam. It seems Thor still cares quite a bit about his little girlfriend. Chen Feng's eyes gleamed. "So, it seems you know his little girlfriend." Natasha suddenly appeared beside Chen Feng, her calm words carrying a hint of coldness. Chen Feng was taken aback, then explained helplessly, "I just met her in New Mexico before. She's just a female astronomer, don't overthink it, honey. Women are really complicated creatures. Even a complete stranger can be seen as a potential threat. Don't you get along well with Mindy?" A woman's heart is unfathomable. After seeing Sewer off, everyone returned to their normal lives. Dr. Banner stopped running away and stayed at S.H.I.E.L.D to continue his research on gamma rays. Sector Captain Rogers also adapted to modern life, becoming a backbone of S.H.I.E.L.D. Tony repaired Stark Tower, constantly improving the Iron Man suit. He finally delivered a Mark VI suit to Chen Feng, but by then, he no longer needed it. As for Tasha and Chen Feng, they were together every day, with Mindy always by their side. As time passed, Mindy grew taller, gradually losing her girlish naivete and gaining a more mature woman's aura. As Chen Feng fell into the sea, he kept thinking about that scene, feeling a sense of exhilaration. But now was not the time. Mindy was only 14 years old. Chen Feng wouldn't force her, getting their consent was the best course of action. However, judging from the current situation, that scene was getting closer and closer. When the three of them were together, Natasha and Chen Feng would always stay up very late. Every morning, the look in Mindy's eyes was a mixture of resentment and longing. Inside S.H.I.E.L.D, A bespectacled man picked up his coffee, took a small sip, and a strange glint flashed in his eyes. He directly asked, "How is the research on the scepter going? What are the results?" A man below replied, "Sir, we have detected powerful energy within it. The next step is to develop and test it." "Very good. After so many years of forbearance, it's time for us to perform." The man's eyes were cold, and a sinister smile appeared on his face, like a demon. However, at this moment, S.H.I.E.L.D appeared peaceful and tranquil, with everyone seriously carrying out the second phase of the plan. Unaware of the undercurrent surging beneath the surface, a violent earthquake was about to erupt. At that moment, the entire S.H.I.E.L.D might be in danger of annihilation, even the entire Earth. The calm before the storm, the last vestiges of calm, perhaps best describe the current situation. Some time after the great battle, the world returned to peace, everything went back to normal. The names of superheroes spread far and wide. The Avengers were known throughout the United States, and indeed the entire world. Chen Feng, though not a member of the Avengers, was known to the citizens of New York, and was greeted by a large crowd of fans shouting his name as soon as he stepped outside. "Chen Feng, I want to have your babies. Chen Feng, you're so handsome. Chen Feng, are you free tonight?" "I'm free." "Chen Feng, I want to eat your noodles, can you come to my house?" "Nobody's home, undoubtedly." These female fans' shouts made Mindy and Tasha roll their eyes at Chen Feng countless times, scolding him like resentful women. Then they pulled him away. This also led to Chen Feng having to transform into other heroes to hide his original appearance when he went out to choose heroes with the two women later. "Chen Feng, I didn't expect you to be the swift Wind Swordsman. You've been fighting crime with me all this time, and I didn't even recognize you. Am I getting presbyopia?" Inside the hall, Peter casually lay on a chair, half-jokingly saying with a smile. Since sending his grandfather to China, Chen Feng had inherited this central hall. The daily flow of people was astonishing. Fortunately, Chen Feng limited the amount of food, otherwise the hall's doors would have been crushed. Peter only connected Chen Feng with the swift Wind Swordsman after reading the detailed account. Chen Feng brought over a plate of his secret recipe steak and asked Peter with a smile, "Haha, I wasn't too keen on revealing my identity before, so I just wanted to tease you a bit. But Peter, university life is pretty good, isn't it? You're living a comfortable life." The aroma of the steak wafted into Peter's nose, and he sighed. "University life? It's just so-so. I've always worked with my advisor, so it's a bit more tiring than the average university student. You don't know how demanding my advisor is. Even if the gene sequence is one level off, he'll scold me mercilessly. Just thinking about it is terrifying. If he weren't so skilled in biological research, I would have quit long ago and didn't want to stay under his tutelage." Mentioning university perfectly revealed Peter's talkative nature, as he poured out his dissatisfaction with university life to Chen Feng. "Peter, you really are the same as before, you haven't changed." Chen Feng picked at his ear, his expression slightly unsettling. This was definitely it. It was that bastard Peter. "By the way, Chen Feng, can you introduce me to the Avengers? I really want to join your team." Peter looked at Chen Feng expectantly, his eyes practically popping out of their sockets. "Sorry, Peter, I can't help you with that. I'm not a member of the Avengers yet, so if you want to join, you'll have to find someone in charge." "Who? Is it Iron Man Tony Stark?" Peter asked excitedly, seemingly idolizing Tony. But thinking about it, it made sense. Tony was the richest man in the District of America and also a great scientist. It was normal for someone like Peter, who loved scientific research, to be associated with Tony. Tony counts, I guess. You could also try contacting Captain Rogers of the District of America. He's a nice guy and easier to get along with than Tony. Chen Feng thought for a moment and reminded Peter. Tony's personality is still a bit arrogant, his playboy nature hasn't completely disappeared. In contrast, Rogers is much better, he'd really like someone willing to protect his family. Thank you, Chen Feng, but I think I already have my answer. Peter looked very happy, eating a large piece of steak. Peter sighed. Chen Feng, your cooking is getting better and better. It's so delicious, Peter. How is Harry doing lately? Is his company alright? Chen Feng suddenly thought of Harry and asked. Peter was happily eating a steak when he heard Chen Feng mention Harry. He hesitated for a moment, then stammered, I met Harry recently, but he didn't look too good. Maybe his company is facing some difficulties again. Harry didn't tell me anything in detail, just told me not to worry, Not good. Chen Feng hesitated, a hint of unease flashing in his eyes. Chen Feng hadn't seen Harry for a while and knew nothing about his situation. He'd better wait until he had time to go to the Osborn group to find Harry and see how things were going. In just a short while, Peter had finished all the palm-sized steaks on his plate. Ugh! So full, Peter patted his stomach, looking quite satisfied. Chen Feng, I'll be going now, otherwise my mentor will be urging me again. Peter rested for a bit, then stood up, ready to leave. Chen Feng, since you know the Avengers, could you tell them about my great achievements and let them know how powerful Spider-Man is? How about it? Peter walked to the door, suddenly turned around, and said to Chen Feng. No problem. After Chen Feng gave him an okay sign, Peter left with a satisfied look on his face. Of course, with Peter's current strength, and considering that he had only defeated some ordinary criminals and killed some vampires, it was still far from enough. His strength still needed some time to grow before it reached the level of the original storyline. In a secluded neighborhood in New York, a bearded man with 10 rings on his hand sat at a table, looking at the screen in front of him. Is this the man in armor who destroyed all our people and weapons in the Middle East that time? The bearded man put a grape in his glass, his voice low, a hint of anger in his eyes. That's right, boss, it's this guy. He not only killed our people, but also destroyed our weapons. Beside him, a burly man spoke up. These people were the 10 Rings gang who kidnapped Tony in the Middle East last time, and the bearded man himself was the leader of the 10 Rings gang, the Mandarin. The 10 Rings ring on his finger was his most powerful weapon. It was also the capital that allowed him to dominate the Middle East and kidnap the richest man in the Americas. Anyone who opposes our 10 Rings gang will not have a good end. From today onwards, you will closely monitor this guy. I will make him pay with his life for it. Everything he cares about, I will destroy for him. The Mandarin slammed his fist on the table, stood up with a blazing fire in his eyes, and shouted loudly. His gaze was fixed on Tony on the screen. A murderous intent was strongly revealed. Inside the Osborn Corporation, a group of people gathered together, silently waiting for the results of the experiment. After a long time, Norman, your physical enhancement project has failed. We have to terminate our cooperation with you. A fungal-like figure dressed in a fungal suit approached Osborn. Norman blocked Lowry's path, hurriedly saying, Lowry, give me another chance. I'll definitely succeed next time. Our Osborn group has thoroughly researched the human body enhancement experiment. One more chance is all it takes. It's absolutely possible. Chapter 90 Disappointment. Damn it. If the bacteria give up now and stop cooperating with the Osborn group, the losses won't just be a few $100 billion. More importantly, the Osborn group will have nothing left to compete with Stark Industries. Now, the Osborn group, already at a disadvantage, is hoping to use this cooperation to turn things around. Norman, I've given you so many chances, but you didn't seize them. The bacteria and I have long since run out of patience. If it weren't for our cooperation, we wouldn't be where we are today. Lowry coldly shoved Norman aside and strode outside. These rebukes left the entire laboratory silent, a deathly stillness settling over. No one spoke. They all silently watched Norman's expression. After Lowry and his group left, Norman finally came to his senses, grabbed the chief scientist by the collar in a frenzy, and demanded angrily, Why did we fail? Can you tell me why? The chief scientist panicked, met Norman's sharp eyes, cold sweat broke out on his forehead, and he didn't know how to answer for a moment. Father, perhaps our equations are wrong, and Dr. Connors isn't here, which is the root cause of the failure of the physical enhancement experiment, Harry advised from the side. The flight weapon project in cooperation with the bacteria was proposed by Harry before Norman recovered. He thought that with Dr. Connors around, the human physical enhancement project would be easy to break through, but who knew that such a thing would happen in the middle? The appearance of the monster completely disrupted Harry's plans. It also ultimately led to Dr. Connors leaving the Spencer Group, which is why we have this failure. Even without Connors, we can succeed. Now, you all, get back to work, find the error, and complete the physical enhancement experiment within 3 days, otherwise, all of you useless people are packing your bags and leaving. Norman roared angrily at all the researchers, leaving the laboratory with a frustrated look on his face. Everyone, focus on your work first, I'll go and talk to my father. Harry comforted all the researchers. These people are the elite of the Osborn group. If we fire them all, will be useless, let alone fight against Stark Industries. After saying that, Harry left the lab to catch up with his father. The people in the lab finally breathed a sigh of relief and shook their heads helplessly. Chen Feng, are you free next Friday? How about we go to the Times Square Carnival together? Inside the Chinese restaurant, Peter fiddled with his chopsticks and asked Chen Feng. Carnival? I want to go. Before Chen Feng could speak, Mindy raised her little hand and shouted impatiently. See, Mindy agreed, so let's go together. Peter was about to pat Mindy's head to thank her for standing up for him, but she dodged him, making him feel a little embarrassed. Since Mindy was so excited, Chen Feng had no reason to refuse. He agreed and brought out more a bowl of boiled beef, asking suspiciously, Peter, you should bring Gwen with you, right? Aren't you afraid it'll be too bright if you ask the two of us to go together? Smells so good. Peter sniffed, his arousal surged, and he drooled. Actually, I wanted your help. It's that last hurdle. How do I get past it? With Mindy nearby, Peter spoke somewhat hesitantly, worried about influencing the child. After all, he was still a novice, inexperienced in this kind of thing, and quite shy around women. Having never overcome that final hurdle. Noticing Peter's shifty eyes, Chen Feng immediately understood and gave a reassuring smile. Mindy, though she had been asking Tasha for advice on this matter, was still an inexperienced kid and naturally didn't grasp the true meaning. Hey, what are you two talking about? What last hurdle? Playing games? I'm very good, just ask me. Mindy didn't understand their meaning and became a little angry, standing on the bridge with her legs crossed. Men's little secrets are like the secrets between you and Sister Tasha, Chen Feng reassured her. Little brat, I'll personally teach you how to pass the final hurdle later. Peter was a little embarrassed at this moment, regretting that he hadn't said it in front of Mindy. How is the modification going? Is it working? That night, Norman returned to the laboratory. Only he and the chief scientist remained. The flawed parts have been corrected, but the specifics still need animal testing. The chief scientist pointed to the machine in front of him and said in a deep voice. No time for animal testing, start human testing directly. Norman immediately objected, offering his opinion. But without animal testing, many unknown dangers cannot be controlled and could lead to death. The chief scientist looked terrified and hurriedly tried to dissuade him. As a scientist, he understood just how terrifying an unknown scientific research product could be. So what if it's death? What if we don't bring the bacteria back soon? Our company will be swallowed up by Stark Industries, and you'll all be out of a job, understand? That's the most important thing right now. Norman coldly glanced at the chief scientist, pointing his finger at him and yelling. I'll conduct the human trials. You go prepare. Norman turned and walked into the machine, only to find the chief scientist still standing there. He was furious. What are you standing there for? Hurry up. At this moment, the chief scientist was finally snapped out of his daze, nodded, and ran to the control panel. The human body enhancement program was designed to enable people to withstand the weight of flying weapons and the pressure on their bodies. Just like the super soldier serum that Captain Rogers took, it could greatly increase the body's limits, turning a weakling into a super fighter. And now, Norman himself, in order to regain the bacteria's support, chose to use his own body for the experiment. Begin. Norman entered the testing platform, completely bound, and with a single glance, gave the chief scientist his order. Norman's unquestionable tone left the chief scientist with no hesitation, and he quickly started the machine. In an instant, a thick green mist billowed out, enveloping the entire testing platform, and Norman's figure vanished into the mist. After a long while, the mist gradually dissipated, and Norman closed his eyes, seemingly falling into deep sleep. Seeing this, the chief scientist rushed to Norman's side in a panic, frantically trying to press the button on the bandages binding him. Just as he touched Norman, he suddenly opened his eyes, his gaze sharp and piercing, like a knife, fixed on the chief scientist. Cold and ruthless. A terrifying, almost tangible aura emanated from him, suppressing the entire room, like a demon from hell, a chilling killing intent spreading out. The atmosphere was incredibly oppressive and terrifying. In an instant, Norman suddenly broke free of his restraints. He grabbed the chief scientist's neck with one finger, veins bulging on his hand, using all his strength. Bones shattered. The chief scientist, eyes wide, didn't even have time to struggle before Norman snapped his neck, leaving a bloodshot, purplish face. He stopped breathing and went to meet Jesus in heaven. At that moment, Norman's body underwent an extraordinary transformation. His strong muscles seemed to have made him more than 10 years younger, radiating a vibrant energy. Ha ha ha, I succeeded. I succeeded. Norman casually tossed the chief scientist's corpse aside like trash, raised his arms, and laughed wildly. Simultaneously, the Osborn Group's intelligence system discovered Norman's murder. A large number of security personnel rushed to the laboratory. Quick! 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 Grab him! Don't let him get away! A large group of security personnel arrived in time, blocking Norman's path as he tried to leave. Get out of my way, Norman coldly scoffed. His expressionless face, devoid of emotion, instilled a chilling fear in the hearts of the security guards before him. A sense of dread washed over them. Everyone involuntarily took several steps back, some trembling, their faces covered in cold sweat. It felt as if they had been possessed by a demon, a chill running down their spines. Father, did you kill him? Just then, Harry arrived, looking at his father with disbelief. Norman remained silent. He wouldn't admit to killing anyone. With Norman's power, settling the matter would be easy as long as he didn't confess. At most, he could pay hush money, then give the murdered scientist's family a large sum to prevent them from pressing charges, and finally, pay off Lucha. A false death certificate would be issued. Everything would vanish like smoke. Seeing the silent Norman, Harry knew it was all true, a look of disappointment crossing his face. His always gentle and refined father had become like this? Cold? A ruthless killer? Harry couldn't accept it. Norman patted Harry on the shoulder and, amidst the fearful gazes of the security guards, opened the laboratory. The next day, the shareholders of the Osborn Group decided to remove Norman from his position as chairman and reclaim his power. They wouldn't tell the police. That would only damage the Osborn Group's reputation and ultimately harm their own interests. Before ensuring the matter was foolproof, removing Norman from his post was the most sensible choice. You all wait and see. There's no going back today, Norman said through gritted teeth, pointing vengefully at the numerous shareholders before him. Since transferring some of his shares to Harry, Norman could no longer control the company as he once did. Now, facing the combined pressure of so many shareholders, there was no chance of a comeback. Norman, you've gone too far. You need time to calm down and lead the Osborn Group onto the right path, not through those underhanded methods. One of the elderly men with a full head of white hair stood up and said earnestly. He was a company veteran, having followed the Osborn Group since its inception. Norman naturally didn't want Norman to ruin his promising future. HMPH. Don't give me that lecturing attitude, Norman turned around and snapped. Chapter 91 Cold Laughter. It was clear he was very unhappy, his eyes were filled with anger, even a hint of murderous intent, though he suppressed it. Father Harry watched the receding figure, a pang of sadness in his heart. When had his father become like this? Times Square Carnival. This was supposed to be the most relaxing day after the major battle. Peter and Gwen. Chen Feng, with Mindy, arrived at the agreed-upon place and immediately saw Peter and Gwen walking hand in hand. Upon seeing them, Mindy immediately took Chen Feng's arm as well. If Tasha hadn't had a mission today, Chen Feng would have definitely brought her along to show Peter what true manly prowess was. Chen Feng, long time no see. I didn't expect you to be a superhero. You looked amazing when you saved the day. Gwen looked at Chen Feng like a fan and said happily. Gwen, your boyfriend is here. Don't forget, I'm also a superhero. Peter's face changed immediately, and he hurriedly announced his identity. Chen Feng is affiliated with the Avengers, which sounds amazing. I'll be one soon too. Really? Gwen looked at Peter incredulously, unable to suppress her excitement. Of course, would I be with you? Regaining Gwen's attention, Peter became more confident, glanced at Chen Feng, and continued, am I right, Chen Feng? Peter's eyes darted upwards, eagerly conveying the information to Chen Feng. He's already a prospective member of the Avengers. Chen Feng's unexpected words almost gave Peter a heart attack. Really? Gwen seemed very excited. Of course, didn't you hear Chen Feng say yes? Peter said smugly. Brothers are the best, they won't let you down when it matters. Alright, we're here to have fun, let's not waste time eating here. Chen Feng rolled his eyes helplessly. He gets all high and mighty after getting a little sunshine. I'm really fed up with this guy. He took Mindy's hand and headed towards the crowd in the distance. Wait for us, Peter shouted from behind, chasing after them with Greenear. The Times Square Carnival was something else. Various colorful balloons floated in the sky, each bearing a different cartoon character, including one shaped like Iron Man, which surprised Chen Feng. Wow. Tony already has fans? Looks like many middlemen took the opportunity to make a killing. Besides the balloons in the sky, the food stalls in Times Square were countless, all kinds of things, no two were the same. However, despite the variety, they all had one thing in common, they were sweet. After all, Americans are among the world's biggest sweet tooths. Anything without sugar would be tasteless. Mindy, eat less, or I won't care if you get fangs. Chen Feng took the candy from Mindy's hand and sternly scolded her. Even if you're out having fun today, you still need to be moderate. What if you get cavities from eating so many sweets? Humph, Mindy gave Chen Feng a coquettish look, pouting, somewhat unhappy. Let's go over there and see, it seems like there's a set. Gwen quickly spoke up, breaking the somewhat awkward atmosphere. Upon hearing about the set, Mindy's eyes lit up, instantly forgetting what had just happened. Sister Gwen, let's go quickly. She grabbed Gwen's hand and rushed over. Just then, Peter came to Chen Feng's side, awkwardly laughing, and said, Chen Feng, tell me, how am I supposed to say the sentence? Upon hearing this, Peter himself couldn't sit still, his old face turning slightly red. I'm so embarrassed. Chen Feng whispered in Peter's ear, like a seasoned master passing on his experience. Remember one thing, you must create a suitable environment, preferably one that stirs up her emotions, and also, the best time is right, understand? After saying all this, Chen Feng didn't forget to give Peter, the newbie, some advice. After hearing Chen Feng's words, Peter felt like he had entered a new world. Everything was so novel. People were intrigued. Chen Feng suddenly seemed to remember something and looked at Peter, asking, what, didn't Harry say he wanted to come to the carnival with you? Generally speaking, Harry, as Peter's best buddy, would definitely come along. Joining in the fun is in his nature. Besides, Chen Feng was here too, so there was no reason for Harry not to come. I asked him, but he seemed to be in a bad mood. Harry also said he wanted to rest, so I didn't force him to come and let him rest at home. Mentioning Harry, Peter sighed and shook his head. A hint of emotion flashed in Chen Feng's eyes, but he didn't think too much about it. This was someone else's business. Why worry about that? After a brief exchange, Chen Feng and Peter slowly walked towards Mindy and Gwen. Mindy, did you get anything? Chen Feng asked with a smile as he approached Mindy. Chen Feng, look, a big doll. That's what I got. Mindy happily picked up the doll beside him, proudly patting his head like a child desperately needing praise. Not bad, my Mindy is really great. To be honest, Mindy already had a background in fighting, and with Yi Shin and Super Tasha's constant guidance recently, Mindy's skills and reactions have become even more impressive. Getting a doll is a piece of cake. If Mindy wanted to, this shopkeeper might go bankrupt. Look, what's that in the sky? Suddenly, someone in the crowd screamed. A big bird? Something's flying around in the sky. It's so fast. Wait, could it be a new superhero shoe? Everyone else noticed this too, and suddenly, Times Square erupted in noise as everyone looked up at the sky. Chen Feng frowned slightly and looked up as well. There stood a person wearing a green bodysuit, riding a flying machine, and wearing a demon mask, hovering in the air, looking down at everyone. Who is that? Does the Avengers have a new member? Peter's eyes flickered as he came to Chen Feng's side and asked curiously. No, get out of the way, Chen Feng shouted. The next moment, the green-clad demon picked up a pumpkin-shaped grenade and mercilessly fired it at the crowd, letting out a wild laugh. One of the grenade was still aimed at Chen Feng and Peter. Peter quickly grabbed Jagwen and pulled her aside. Chen Feng stared, motionless, and with a gentle wave of his right hand, the pumpkin bomb split in two in mid-air and exploded. The crowd below became even more chaotic. A large-scale stampede was imminent. Chen Feng snapped his fingers, using his time magic and runic magic to freeze everyone in place and then move them to safety. Peter, what are you waiting for? It's time to show your strength. After doing all this, Chen Feng smiled and looked at Peter beside him. He didn't need to deal with a low-level enemy like the Green Demon himself. It was a good opportunity for Peter to practice and improve his fighting skills. If he only had the low-level skills of an ordinary gang member, he would be embarrassed to be introduced to the Avengers. The Green Demon in the sky was stunned for a moment after seeing Chen Feng's extraordinary methods. A magician? Gwen, stay close to Chen Feng and don't move. I'm going to take care of that green sparrow in the sky. Peter quickly changed his clothes, transforming into a female warrior. P.S. Please vote. Please rate 5. Peter's successful costume change in just 2 seconds truly surprised Chen Feng. No wonder he's a pure virgin who hasn't hit a home run yet, his hand speed is incredibly fast. His 18 years of single life are no joke. Peter raised his hand and spat out a strand of spider silk, pulling himself into the air. Before Green Evil could react, a mocking glint flashed in Peter's eyes as he spat out another strand of spider silk, directly hitting Green Evil's eyes. Damn bastard! At this moment, Green Evil finally reacted, tearing off the silk on his face, his flying device blazing with intense flames, instantly moving away from Peter. Peter missed his target. Then, he followed closely. Hey, Green Evil, I'll beat you to pulp. A strand of spider silk shot out, then Peter swung around, arriving behind Green Evil. He delivered a vicious kick to Green Evil. As if anticipating this, the Green Demon suddenly shifted his stance, dodging Peter's attack. He sneered. The flying vehicle released 2 throwing knives, swiftly aiming for Peter's back. Fortunately, Peter sensed his presence and released his webs, narrowly avoiding the knives' trajectory. Sister, today will be the beginning of my Green Demon's rise to fame, Green roared, his flying vehicle surging forward, spewing forth even more intense flames, instantly reaching Peter's side, a pumpkin bomb in his hand. Before even getting close, he pulled a pin. Reaching Peter, the Green Demon, with a smug grin, threw it directly at him. Boom! The explosion rang out. Deafening. The shockwave swept rapidly, accompanied by a thick cloud of smoke, countless grains of sand flying, the entire space becoming indistinct. But just then, a red figure suddenly emerged from the smoke, landing heavily on Green Goblin. The powerful force sent Green Goblin flying, crashing into a tall building in front of him. Annoying little bug, Green Goblin shook his head, his eyes blazing with anger. A thought struck him, and his aircraft, already in motion, spewed flames again, shooting out of the building. He turned to face Peter, a cold smile playing on his lips. Killing intent. Ha, annoying little bug, you must be joking, Peter chuckled, not giving his enemy a chance. He charged forward, unleashing 3 or 4 strands of silk, a tangled net covering Green Goblin. However, Green Goblin evaded all of this with incredible speed. The aircraft beneath him continued firing, still managing to land a considerable number of bullets. Chapter 92 Departure. Is this for real? Do you really think all these bullets are free? Peter, seeing this, could only temporarily avoid the attack. His bodysuit was made of ordinary materials, not even as good as a bulletproof vest. He's hit. That's it. Why are you hiding, you weak little bug? Come out. Green Goblin's face was extremely arrogant, his cold and cruel gaze moving up and down, slowly flying through the air, searching for Peter's figure. He already tightly gripped a pumpkin bomb in his hand, ready to strike at any moment. Boom. After several rounds, Green Goblin hadn't found Peter, and had already thrown all the pumpkin bombs in his hand. A tall building in the surrounding area was destroyed as a result. Countless pieces of debris fell from the sky and landed on the ground. Spider-Man was also frightened and rushed out from his hiding place. Ha ha ha, found you, little bug. Green Goblin flew towards Peter in his new flying vehicle, laughing heartily. You won't fall this time, right? Stick. 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 Countless bullets flew towards Peter's body. At this moment, facing the hail of bullets, Peter reacted again, displaying superhuman agility. With a few quick dodges, he managed to deflect all the attacks. Countless bullet casings dripped onto the ground, making a dripping sound. And his next move. Big glasses. Peter unexpectedly took the initiative. With a few quick movements, spider silk shot out. At the same time, his figure flashed, rushing towards Green Goblin with lightning speed. A two-pronged attack. Green Goblin's eyes darkened, and he immediately stopped attacking, fleeing to the side. Peter relentlessly pursued him. Finally, relying on the surrounding dense forest-like buildings, he and Green Goblin grappled together. Will Peter be alright? Gwen nervously clutched her hands, her face filled with worry every time she saw Peter get brutally beaten by the Green Goblin. Don't worry, your boyfriend is a superhero, his fighting skills are top-notch, Chen Feng shrugged. Just kidding. Peter might not be good at anything else, but his fighting ability is strong. Besides, he's not bad either. How boring. Their fight is going on, and there's still no winner. I'm so bored I want a bag of popcorn, Mindy said, bored out of her mind. Okay. A thrilling, life or death battle. In her eyes, it's become a boring popcorn movie, as expected of someone who's seen a lot of high-class fights. Their style is different. It's good that this is a city fight. Peter has webs, which makes him more agile. In this aspect of speed, his chances of winning are still high. Chen Feng analyzed the fight with sharp eyes and commented to himself. The next moment, Peter took advantage of the terrain. Suddenly, something rushed out from the other side of the house, pulling Green Goblin off the aircraft. Green Goblin crashed into the balcony of the house below, but didn't seem to be seriously injured. Peter began kicking Green Goblin. Now, having experienced many battles, Peter's fighting skills were far superior to Green Goblin's. He quickly gained the upper hand, firmly suppressing Green Goblin. However, his spider senses gave him a warning of danger. This time, Peter didn't react in time and was slammed into the back by the aircraft. Peter was knocked to the ground by the force of the impact. So what if you're strong? You think you can fight me? You're too naive. Green Goblin jumped back onto the aircraft, grinning ruthlessly. The gun on the aircraft was aimed at Peter's head, and bright smoke was about to appear. At that moment, a rock suddenly struck the aircraft. Thick smoke immediately billowed out. Oh no, Green Goblin's expression changed drastically. He almost lost control of the aircraft and hurriedly retreated, wobbling as it flew into the distance. Finally gone, Peter breathed a sigh of relief, sitting on the balcony watching Green Goblin gradually disappear. Luckily, he was quick-witted enough to use his magic to circle around a rock and use it when Green Goblin was off guard. That's how he defeated Green Goblin. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to win, and the outcome would have been reversed. Given how things had unfolded, Peter would likely have been shot down by the dense bullets. So, Chen Feng, how is my strength? Peter left the balcony, panting, and laughed as he spoke to Chen Feng. You beat the Green Goblin. You've taught so many people. With this performance, you should be qualified to join the Avengers, right? Don't be proud of this achievement. If you could personally defeat the Green Goblin, I believe you'd soon get your ticket to the Avengers. In the past year, Peter had changed a lot, at least his fighting skills and the use of his superpowers had reached a very high level. His reaction speed in battle had also greatly improved. At the very least, he could make the right judgment at the most crucial moments. Really? That's great. Peter stared intently into Chen Feng's eyes. Chen Feng turned his head and looked into the distance. Damn, that fiery gaze was really a bit uncomfortable. Peter didn't care. He was completely absorbed in excited fantasies. The Avengers, that's the world's most powerful team of superheroes. Every hero would want to join this team. Suddenly, a new goal appeared in his mind. Green Goblin, right? Like me. Chen Feng pretended not to care about Peter, then suddenly wondered if he was being a bit too nosy. He wasn't a member of the Avengers. He was only helping out of respect for Mayukisa. After all, Chen Feng had never claimed to be a member of the Avengers. Would he go there to be managed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and those government juveniles? No, impossible. Just then, several streaks of light flashed in the distance, followed by the roar of fighter jets. An F-35 fighter jet had landed in Times Square. Rogers and Director Fury stepped out of the jet together. Chen Feng, you're here too. Rogers was slightly taken aback when he saw Chen Feng and asked curiously. Just here for a visit, but you guys are really slow. Everyone's already gone. Chen Feng shrugged. I didn't expect anyone to be here at this time. We've already rushed here as fast as we can. After all, we don't have your power, Chen Feng, to directly open a special gate. Rogers glanced at Chen Feng expressionlessly, then slowly walked towards Peter. Chen Feng stared blankly. Rogers had already reached Peter's side. Chen Feng asked, Frey, Roger means I should keep the Tesseract, right? Fury quickly shook his head and hurried to catch up with Rogers. That's Rogers' idea. I never said that, please. If he agreed to Rogers' words, wouldn't he be driven to his death by this little devil, Chen Feng? Chen Feng's strength and cunning are obvious to everyone. Little Fusey, what's your name? Can you come with us and give a statement? Rogers looked at Peter's red bodysuit and guessed what he was wearing. However, since Peter wasn't very famous at the time, Rogers didn't know his name. Peter Parker, just call me Peter. Peter extended his right hand, looking very excited. Is this Rogers, the captain of the Avengers? Wow. He's actually quite young. I heard he's been frozen in an iceberg for decades, so he's practically my senior. In just a few seconds, Peter's mind was racing. True to his personality, If his mind wasn't quick, he wouldn't be able to say so much. Speaking of which, quick thinking is essential. Hello, Peter, my name is Rogers. Rogers extended his left hand and shook hands with Peter. So, you'll take me to the Avengers, right? Will I be able to see Godzilla, Iron Man Tony, and the Hulk? Oh, and that guy who's really good at archery. I just forgot who it is. Peter was very excited and talked non-stop. That guy's name is I. If you really want to know, why don't you come to the Avengers? Rogers chuckled. This was the first time he'd met such a British fan. He suddenly liked Peter a little. He probably saw the simplicity in Peter's heart and that sense of justice. Okay, let's go quickly. I've only seen you on TV before. It would be even better to meet you in person. By the way, can I take Gwen with me? She likes the Avengers too. Peter looked at Rogers expectantly. Well, Peter, the Avengers are actually a secret department. Only people with special permission can enter. We generally don't open it to ordinary people, so Gwen. Rogers helplessly shook his head, expressing his deep regret. But Gwen is my girlfriend, and her father is the most righteous police captain in the back district of New York. You see, there's no need to say so much. You don't need to rush to the Avengers. It's just a crappy place. Even I don't want to go there. Chen Feng stepped forward and firmly refused on Peter's behalf. Why go to the Avengers? What's the point? Just now, the system, which had been silent for a long time, suddenly issued a mission to Chen Feng. Help Peter defeat the Green Goblin. I don't know what the reward is, but it certainly won't be bad. It might even be a very special prize. After all, this is related to the original plot. Chen Feng, this matter is within the jurisdiction of S.H.I.E.L.D. Siri, can you cooperate with us? Rogers raised his eyebrows and spoke seriously. You just want to catch that masked Joker, right? I accept this mission. You can go back to S.H.I.E.L.D., comfortably watch the screen, and wait for me to bring that Joker to you. Chen Feng was about to leave with Peter. Hey Chen Feng, Rogers, just leave this to Chen Feng. I really want to see why he's doing this. Furious stopped Rogers, looking at Chen Feng who was leaving with a puzzled expression. P.S. I've been busy lately, so I'll only be updating 4 times a day for now. Please help. Chen Feng took Peter and Gwen back to his home. Along the way, Peter kept complaining about why Chen Feng wouldn't let him join the Avengers. Once his chatterbox mode was activated, it was endless, like a never-ending river. Chen Feng felt like his ears were about to get old. Chapter 93 Missing. Peter, let me tell you the truth. If you don't go to the Avengers with Rogers, you'll never be able to join them. Because the Green Goblin will be dealt with by the Avengers, and you won't be part of their fight, understand? Chen Feng pressed Peter's shoulder, his face righteously pleading for his help. But Captain America said he'd take me to the Avengers. Doesn't that mean he wants me to join? Peter was taken aback, somewhat confused. Did he say he wanted you to join the Avengers? No, he didn't say that at all. He didn't even allow Gwen to visit. This means Rogers isn't training you as a prospective member, he just needs someone to provide him with information on the Green Goblin, and you're that person, Chen Feng said again seriously, his tone ambiguous. Is that really true? Peter still had some doubts. After all, Rogers' words and attitude were too tempting. Peter, do you think I would lie to you? Chen Feng's eyes were fixed on Peter. Of course not, we're best friends, Peter replied decisively, without the slightest hesitation. A best friend betraying you? It's highly unlikely. You don't need to question me about this. I've dealt with the Avengers, I know them better than you do. Believe me, only if you defeat Green Goblin will you have a voice in the Avengers. Chen Feng patted Peter on the shoulder and went to get a drink from the refrigerator. At this moment, an ice-cold beer was the perfect drink to relieve fatigue. Ah! Peter, what happened to you? Just then, Gwen shouted loudly, her face full of worry. Let me see. Before Chen Feng could arrive, Mindy was already beside Peter. Having followed a boss in Chen Feng for so long, Mindy had not only learned martial arts but also mastered some basic first aid techniques. Mindy glanced at the injury on Peter's hand and breathed a slight sigh of relief. It's alright, just a cut from a sharp weapon. The bleeding has stopped. Fortunately, there's no poison, so it's nothing serious. Hearing Mindy's words, Gwen finally relaxed, but still looked at Peter with heartache. Gwen, don't worry, my body isn't that fragile, Peter said, showing off his arm muscles. His energetic appearance almost made Gwen laugh. Every superhero has to be prepared to fight, so Gwen, You have to accept that Peter will have many imitations of the future, which is his symbol of punishing evil and upholding justice. Chen Feng came over with 3 bottles of ice wine, giving one to Peter and one to Gwen. Chen Feng, where's mine? Mindy immediately became unhappy and questioned. Little kid, go drink some milk. Chen Feng pointed to the large bottle of milk on the table and said calmly. Phew, Mindy thought for a moment and complained. Mindy, you're still young. When you're an adult, we sisters will drink until we drop, Gwen quickly comforted her. In such a short time, Gwen and Mindy had become good friends, which was quite surprising. Yes, then we'll still be with Sister Lasha, Mindy, not forgetting Natasha, said happily. This pleased Chen Feng. The better their relationship, the better it would be for him. Peter, why don't you stay for lunch today? You can take a shower, and then Aunt May might notice something's wrong when you go back. Chen Feng and Peter exchanged a glance, and Chen Feng said, that's fine. I told Aunt May not to prepare lunch. Peter nodded and took a sip of beer. The Green Goblin's sudden attack on the Times Square Carnival was something no one expected. It completely disrupted Peter's plans. He had originally wanted to take advantage of this wonderful day to get closer to Gwen, but it seemed he would have to wait another day. After lunch, everyone chatted for a while longer before Peter took Gwen back. Before leaving, Chen Feng didn't forget to help his good friend. He pulled him aside and taught him more useful home-run techniques. Tonight, he would help Peter realize his long-held dream. Thank you, Chen Feng, you're truly my good brother. Peter hugged Chen Feng tightly, his words filled with gratitude. Good friends are rare, and such a close friend is even rarer. After seeing Peter off, Chen Feng pondered the system's mission, help Peter defeat the Green Goblin. Moreover, he couldn't intervene, he could only offer advice. Everything had to be done by Peter himself. Wasn't this making him the mastermind behind everything, the fungus master? Although it seemed easy, it wasn't, because you had to help the target. If you didn't help, the mission would fail. PFFT, what a brain, Chen Feng thought to himself. Then he sprawled on the sofa, feeling a bit numb. Mindy also pounced on Chen Feng, sleepily asking, Chen Feng, something good happened again? Chen Feng patted Mindy's head and nodded, nothing. As dawn broke, a new lottery opportunity arrived, and Chen Feng immediately entered the system. Looking at the lottery panel in front of him, start, the wheel spun rapidly, then slowly came to a stop, displaying a dazzling array of heroes before Chen Feng. Congratulations, host, you have obtained the new hero, the great inventor, Heimerdinger, the system's mechanical voice announced. The hero panel displayed a new hero with a massive head, the great inventor, Heimerdinger. He could be considered the most intelligent Yordle on Runeterra, and also the greatest scientist. The technological genius of Runeterra. The great inventor, Heimerdinger. Chen Feng pondered this hero's information deeply. While his fighting prowess and strength weren't top tier, his intellect was undoubtedly among the best on the entire Runeterra. Only Heimerdinger could perfectly combine technology and magic. Of course, to broaden his knowledge, Heimerdinger conducted an experiment on himself, enlarging his brain capacity, which resulted in his head becoming incredibly large. Thus, he gained another nickname, Big Head. Perhaps I could use Heimerdinger's knowledge to create some gadgets for Peter to help him fight the Green Goblin. This idea gradually formed in Chen Feng's mind. Since he couldn't act himself, the best way to help Peter was to utilize Heimerdinger's scientific power, starting with the details. This would ensure Peter wouldn't be at a disadvantage in his fight against the Green Goblin due to his inability to fly. With this thought in mind, Chen Feng felt it was feasible and prepared to go to Stark Tower. Tony had many of the materials he needed. Various sophisticated instruments, laboratories, etc., were all available there. He didn't need to prepare them himself. Tomorrow, he would go to Stark Tower tomorrow. Damn. Is someone thinking about me again? Tony, who was in the lab researching the next generation of Iron Man suits, suddenly sneezed, touched his nose, and muttered to himself. It was almost 1 in the morning, but Tony wasn't sleepy at all, his eyes bloodshot as he continued his research. It wasn't that Tony didn't want to sleep, but he couldn't fall asleep. His condition was getting worse every day. Jarvis, activate the light pulse wave and proceed with the next experiment. Tony was diligently conducting the experiment, but it was clear he looked extremely exhausted. Early the next morning, before Chen Feng was fully awake, the phone rang. Peter, what's up so early? Chen Feng answered the phone, speaking groggily. Chen Feng, are you still asleep? I just wanted to tell you that Harry's bringing his father to my house for dinner today. Do you want to come? Weren't you worried about Harry's condition? He quickly explained the situation. Harry and his father are coming to your house? I'll be there. What time? Chen Feng suddenly perked up and immediately asked. Noon, but I'd like you to come early so Harry's father can try your cooking, Peter replied happily. Then, full of joy, he continued, by the way, I have some good news for you. I succeeded in my hospital visit yesterday. It was truly an unforgettable night. Chen Feng smiled calmly, then congratulations, Peter. But thank you anyway, Chen Feng. Come over here quickly, Aunt May and Uncle Ben are waiting for you, Peter reminded Chen Feng one last time. Okay, don't rush, I'll be right there. After saying that, Chen Feng hung up the phone. S.H.I.E.L.D couldn't go to Stark Tower to see Tony today, but it wasn't a big deal, he could go tomorrow. After a while, Chen Feng brought Mindy to Peter's house. Tasha was still away on a mission, and it had been almost 2 weeks. Chen Feng missed her very much. Aunt May and Uncle Ben. As soon as Chen Feng came in, he saw Aunt May and Uncle Ben busy in the kitchen. It was clear that they also valued Harry and his father's visit. After all, Peter's father had been an employee of the Osborn Corporation and had worked with Norman. However, due to various reasons, he left the Osborn Corporation. The two families were old acquaintances. Chen Feng, you're finally here. I haven't seen you for a while. I never imagined you'd join the Avengers to protect us, Aunt May greeted Chen Feng with delight. Back when we were high school classmates, May always had a crush on me. I'm just helping out, I haven't joined the Avengers yet. Chen Feng shook her head and hugged May. You haven't joined them? That's alright. As long as you're protecting us, that's all that matters. Uncle Ben also walked over, smiling broadly at Chen Feng. And this little girl is, May then noticed Mindy standing to the side and looked at Chen Feng questioningly. Despite Mindy's adult disguise, Aunt May immediately saw through her disguise and realized she was still a little girl. I'm Chen Feng's girlfriend, Mindy readily admitted. Chapter 94 Ability. Really? Aunt May was clearly surprised. Mindy was probably only 15 years old. No, Aunt May, kids always like to joke around, Shen Yu awkwardly denied. This little girl, always causing trouble for herself. She'd even mentioned it before coming, and now it was all taken for granted. Uncle Ben was also shocked. Mindy wasn't even an adult yet, that could be a crime. Only Peter and Gwen knew what was going on and quickly explained. After a while, and after Chen Feng glanced at Mindy a few times, the matter was considered closed. Afterwards, Aunt May and Uncle Ben were once again amazed by Chen Feng's skill. This was clearly something only a chef with decades of experience could make. As time passed, Harry and his father, Norman Osborn, finally arrived. Peter hurried to the door to greet them. Harry, Uncle Norman, you've finally arrived. I even specially invited Chen Feng here today to treat you to a meal. Harry was surprised to hear this. Chen Feng is here too. I'm here, Lee. Chen Feng, having finished cooking, came out of the kitchen. Upon seeing Chen Feng, Lee was even more excited. Chen Feng, you're really here. I'm going to have a good taste of your cooking today. I don't even know when I last ate Chen Feng's cooking. Every time I think about it, I can't help but drool. You must be the Chen Feng that Harry has been talking about all along. Nice to meet you. I'm Harry's father, Man, and Spencer. Man walked to Lee's side at this moment, smiling as he showed his right hand. Man had already met Chen Feng. Uncle Norman, hello. Harry has always mentioned you to me. You are both a great scientist and a successful businessman. You don't know how proud Harry is every time he talks about you. Chen Feng extended his hand and smiled politely. Norman smiled and nodded, saying modestly, Harry, he's exaggerating. I'm not that great yet. I need to be at least like Tony Stark to be considered truly successful. Peter praised, no, in my heart, Uncle Norman, you're already a very successful person. Osborn Group's medical research will definitely help many people in the future. He then led Norman and Harry into the room. The three chatted animatedly, but Harry seemed somewhat distracted, even his smile looked forced. Harry, come to the kitchen and cook me a dish. Let Uncle Norman try your cooking. Chen Feng called Harry into the kitchen. This surprised Norman greatly. Harry, you can cook too. Chen Feng smiled and answered for Harry, Uncle Norman, I'm here, don't worry. After saying that, Chen Feng led Harry into the kitchen. Harry, what's wrong with you lately? Is something on your mind? Chen Feng immediately asked as they entered the kitchen. The company matter was already resolved, wasn't it? Has something else happened, Chen Feng? I'm fine. It's just a small company matter, it'll be resolved in a few days. Harry avoided Chen Feng's gaze, reluctant to reveal his father's situation. After all, it involved murder, violating the Chu family's laws. Although Chen Feng was a good friend, it was best not to spread the news for his father's reputation. Harry, judging from your expression, this isn't a small matter. I think you should tell me. Peter and I can help you get through this. Chen Feng stared intently at Harry, his face serious. Harry let out a deep breath, glancing at the plate beside him, and said, Chen Feng, thank you. You and Peter are my best friends, but this time, I'll handle it myself. Seeing the determination deep in Harry's eyes, Chen Feng knew that saying anything more would be useless. Alright, but if you really encounter a problem you can't solve, Peter and I will always be there for you. At this point, further words from Chen Feng were pointless. He could only agree with Harry's decision. Harry, come on, let me make you a simple and delicious stir-fry. Chen Feng placed a bunch of greens in Harry's hand, gesturing for him to wash them. I've never washed greens before, don't blame me if I mess it up. Harry took the greens to the tap and said timidly. It's okay, I'm here as the chef. What are you afraid of? Chen Feng said confidently. For a super talented chef, is there any need to worry about such a small thing? Hey Harry, wave your hand. If you don't flip it now, it'll be over. Chen Feng couldn't bear to look at Harry's skills and patted his forehead. Rich young master, his family has a mine, it's different, he doesn't need to work at all. However, with Chef Chen Feng around, and after a few words of criticism, Harry's skills improved quite a bit. Soon, a stir-fry dish was freshly made. Although it had a slight blemish, it still emitted a fragrant aroma, and overall it was not bad. It seems that Harry does have some talent in cooking, he can make a dish on his first try. Aunt May, seeing Harry bring out the dishes, smiled and said to Norman beside her, I didn't even realize he had this talent. It seems we can let him learn from Chen Feng so he can taste Harry's cooking more often when he gets home. Norman looked very happy. Eating Harry's cooking for the first time was the greatest joy for his father. Everyone, try it, Chen Feng said with a smile. It's all thanks to Chen Feng. I just did what he said. Harry quickly shook his head, denying it. If Chen Feng hadn't been supervising, this stir-fry would probably have turned into coal dust. Haha, Uncle Norman, Harry is just as humble as you. Like father, like son. Harry will definitely be able to inherit the Osborn group well in the future. Chen Feng picked up the red wine on the table, opened it, and poured a glass for everyone. Peter, what happened to your hand? Just as Peter was holding the wine glass, Norman noticed the injury on his hand. No, it's nothing. I was just learning to play basketball and I accidentally got scratched. Peter quickly rolled up his sleeve, his gaze slightly averted, and replied. Oh, I see. You must be more careful in the future and protect yourself. Norman's eyes revealed a complex expression, the meaning of which was unclear. Aunt May and Uncle Ben, standing to the side, also looked at Peter with concern, clearly worried. Peter could only keep explaining and assuring them that Aunt May and Uncle Ben stopped pressing the matter. However, in the following time, Norman would intentionally or unintentionally ask whether Peter often went out at night. This startled Peter. Apart from Chen Feng, no one else present knew that he transformed into Spider-Man at night and went out to fight crime. Aunt May and Uncle Ben were also curious as to why Norman would ask such a question. In their memory, Peter always came home on time every night, or he was studying and helping his professor with experiments. He basically never went out alone. They were just curious. After all, Peter was old enough to have a girlfriend. Norman then explained, and his reasoning convinced everyone. Indeed. Aunt May and Uncle Ben were both hoping Peter would find a girlfriend soon. Aunt May, Uncle Ben, don't worry, it'll be soon. Just wait a little longer, and Peter will be able to bring her to meet you, Chen Feng teased with a smile. Peter's face and ears instantly turned bright red, adding to everyone's laughter. After lunch, besides marveling at Chen Feng's superb cooking skills, they chatted casually. After Norman and Harry left, Chen Feng also left Peter's house with Mindy. Peter, don't let your guard down about the Green Goblin. In a few days, I'll give you some new things, just wait. Chen Feng stood at the door and said to Peter, who came out to see him off. Something new? I'll be looking forward to it. Peter's face lit up with joy upon hearing this. Although he didn't know what Chen Feng would bring him in the end, Peter felt a strange sense of anticipation. Perhaps it was because Chen Feng's previous display of strength had left a deep impression on Peter's mind. Then I'll be going now. Remember, keep it up. Chen Feng took Mindy's hand and turned to leave. Goodbye. Peter waved goodbye to Chen Feng. 937 Chen Feng, what's the new thing you said you were going to give Peter? Mindy asked curiously. It's a secret. I'll show it to you when I finish it. Chen Feng pursed his lips, keeping her in suspense. Tell me, Chen Feng. Tell me. Seeing this, Mindy immediately activated her coquettish function, instantly clinging to Chen Feng. Instantly, a deep, soft hand pressed against Chen Feng's hand. It has to be said, the feel was really quite good, with a soft and fluffy texture. Compared to Tasha's fullness, it was a different style altogether. Little girl, you've really developed well lately. Coquettishness won't work. If I told you, it wouldn't be a secret anymore. Let's go home first. Chen Feng let Mindy hold his hand, relying on his wrist strength to lead Mindy forward. Get in the car. Chen Feng opened the car door and put Mindy in. Early the next morning, after taking Mindy to school, Chen Feng went to Stark Tower. Tony was researching a new generation of Iron Man suits when Chen Feng suddenly appeared before him, nearly causing his experiment to fail. Chen Feng, could you at least say hello before coming in? You almost ruined my experiment, Tony complained, though he could only mutter quietly. After all, he owed Chen Feng many favors and was no match for him in a fight. However, since he was on his own turf, he had to maintain his last shred of dignity. Your experiment. Chen Feng looked at the Iron Man suit being fitted in front of him with disdain. Suddenly, all the details of the Iron Man suit entered Chen Feng's eyes, forming a data panel. The materials used, the formulas employed, even the calculation methods for each part, all appeared in Chen Feng's mind. Even more astonishingly, a series of evaluations and judgments followed. A part was installed incorrectly. Which part could be replaced with a better material? The calculation methods and formulas for each part were all pointed out as wrong. Was this the ability of the great inventor Heimerdinger? Chapter 95 Lament. Chen Feng was stunned, completely ignoring Tony's hand-to-hand struggle beside him, inwardly marveling. While it was true that on Runeterra, the person at the pinnacle of technology, capable of combining technology and magic, was the great inventor Heimerdinger, that was only on Runeterra. But now, in the Marvel Universe, a terrifying place where countless genius scientists, and even mutants whose brains had been modified with superpowers, gathered, the great inventor Heimerdinger seemed to be holding his own, even surpassing the others. Was this the power of a full-level technique, amplifying Heimerdinger's mental storm once again, who after exhaling a deep breath, Chen Feng finally calmed down. Tony, what are you doing? Chen Feng immediately noticed Tony looking around curiously beside him and asked. What were you thinking about? Were you thinking about women? Or were you possessed by a ghost? Tony asked suspiciously, still scrutinizing Chen Feng. Can I borrow your lab for a bit? You can stop your Iron Man suit experiments for now, Chen Feng said succinctly, swatting away Tony's hand that was about to touch his forehead. Borrow your lab? Are you kidding me? Tony was immediately speechless, wondering if Chen Feng had lost his mind. What do you mean, kidding me? Don't forget you still owe me several favors, and that Iron Man suit is still nowhere to be found. Get your stuff out of here, I need it, Chen Feng said, his words carrying a hint of threat. These words left Tony speechless, unsure how to retort. Although this was his territory, it seemed the ownership had already been transferred to Chen Feng. Tony quickly stepped in front of Chen Feng, blocking his progress and shutting down the equipment. He said earnestly, Wait, Chen Feng. I remember you only graduated from high school, you didn't even go to university. And in high school, your grades weren't particularly good, you were often last in your class. So, Tony hesitated, not wanting to hurt Chen Feng's pride or retaliate against him. So you're taking these things away, I need to use this lab, Chen Feng, don't you understand what I mean? Do I really have to explain all this? Tony said impatiently, thinking Chen Feng was pretending not to understand. Tell me, I'm really curious, Chen Feng, on the other hand, smiled and said. Hearing Chen Feng's words, Tony suddenly became interested, his expression becoming very serious. After a long period of contemplation, he finally made up his mind and said solemnly, What I mean is, you don't have the talent to be a scientist, your abilities aren't enough, and this place doesn't have the right genes for scientific research. Tony pointed at Chen Feng's head, but still hesitated, speaking in a roundabout way. He seemed quite wary of Chen Feng's advances. "You mean your brain isn't sharp enough?" Chen Feng bluntly stated. "Well, that's roughly what I mean. After all, judging from your experience, your abilities far surpass your intellect. I'm not saying you're not smart, just that you're still a bit lacking for scientific research," Tony said timidly, afraid of displeasing Chen Feng. "Have you ever heard the saying, a scholar should be viewed with new eyes after 3 days' absence?" Chen Feng didn't seem to care much about Tony's words, and instead asked, "What? Is that some kind of technical jargon from your China?" Hearing Chen Feng's words, Tony was completely bewildered, not understanding what he meant at all. "It's okay if you don't know. I just want to tell you that your understanding of me shouldn't be limited to the past, but should focus on the present. Take the Iron Man suit you're working on, for example. It's too limited to the previous suits and you haven't seen the new things to come. So your experiment will definitely end in failure," Chen Feng said bluntly. Tony scratched his head, looking at Chen Feng in shock. Did this mean that my current research direction on the suit was wrong? Wait a minute, Chen Feng, don't think that just because you're talking nonsense, I'll be convinced and hand over the lab to you to do some shady things. Tony once again stood in front of Tony and said seriously. He was one of the top scientists in the entire region. There were only a handful of people in the entire region who could match him. You, a low-level intellectual who didn't even go to university and only graduated from high school, dare to spout nonsense in front of real scientists? Even if you are very strong and I can't beat you, I am still inviolable in areas where I have an absolute advantage. I, Tony, Iron Man, am not convinced." Chen Feng looked at Tony, who had a resentful look on his face, and sneered. Chen Feng slowly walked up to the Iron Man suit and pointed to a piece of armor on its chest, saying, "This is made of titanium alloy. But if you used a lighter carbon titanium alloy, you could not only reduce the weight of the Iron Man suit, which would improve flight speed, but also increase its flexibility, making it more resistant to impact." He then walked to the other side and pointed to another part of the Iron Man suit, saying, "This part of the armor could have been fitted with a small missile to increase firepower, but you modified it to be streamlined, reducing friction. However, overall, it won't improve it much. In fact, it will reduce the Iron Man suit's offensive capabilities, and here, you've been stuck in old ideas, trying to make it more resistant to damage, but you've only focused on increasing its thickness, neglecting the importance of materials. And most importantly, the energy system. Wanting to increase speed is a good idea, but you can't increase the burden on the Iron Man suit for the sake of speed. You need to know that the arc reactor before us used the new energy source. Energy systems can also be developed in this direction, not just relying on the old ones." Chen Feng then pointed out many errors in the Iron Man suit, explaining them at length. He only stopped when he had pointed out the last small detail. Tony, standing to the side, was stunned, his mouth agape, staring at Chen Feng in disbelief. WTF? Is this still the academic underachiever I know? Is this still the student who hovered around the passing mark in every subject during final exams? Tony's worldview was completely overturned, and he didn't know how to face Chen Feng. Not only was he stronger than him, but he was also smarter. It was like a top student who had excellent grades, but worked even harder. Someone smarter than you, and working even harder, that's the difference between people. Now, in front of Chen Feng, Tony's last shred of pride vanished. "How did you know?" At this moment, Tony stared at Chen Feng, speechless, and asked in utter shock. "How did I know? It's from here, isn't it? Your most confident spot." Chen Feng casually pointed to his head, as if it were a trivial matter. "Your head?" Tony pointed to his brain, feeling a painful sense of being mocked instead of being understood. This feeling of being ridiculed was the most desperate and humiliating moment Tony had ever experienced. For a moment, Tony felt his mind was muddled, a complete blank. "Can you take this pile of junk away? I need to get started now." Chen Feng approached the workbench and said to Tony. However, Tony was completely stunned, not hearing Chen Feng's words at all. He seemed lost in thought, wondering if his newly developed Iron Man suit had gone wrong in the way Chen Feng had described. A moment later, Tony finally reacted, but the new suit had already been removed from the lab. "Hey, Chen Feng, you didn't ask for my permission." Tony confronted Chen Feng, who was about to begin work, and questioned him angrily. "Didn't I tell you? That's just a pile of scrap metal. It's useless. I'm getting rid of it for your own good, to save you from wasting more energy on a failed product," Chen Feng said seriously, seemingly very concerned for Tony. If Tony hadn't known Chen Feng for a long time, he might have believed him. "What are you saying? I won't easily believe your words. My Iron Man suit couldn't possibly have so many mistakes," Tony retorted sharply, clinging to his last shred of pride and dignity. This was the last shred of dignity a top scientist should possess. His pride wouldn't allow him to lose face like this. Unless I create a new suit and truly point out your mistakes, right?" Chen Feng said Tony's final harsh words with utter indifference. "That's right, I just don't believe everything you say is correct. Don't forget, I'm the designer of the Iron Man suit. Most of Stark Industries' products were developed by me," Tony went on and on, almost revealing that his father was Howard Stark. "Is an Iron Man suit that difficult?" Chen Feng said sarcastically. He appeared completely relaxed, not taking Tony's words to heart. Tony arrogantly raised his head. "I'll see how long you can keep up this act. A Greenhorn High School graduate, a street racer, thinks he can scare me?" Although he was already intimidated, Chen Feng's mindset wasn't affected by Tony's expression. He simply went to the lab bench and, under Tony's disbelieving gaze, began his Iron Man suit development. Materials, parts, computers, and anything else needed to forge the Iron Man suit, Chen Feng had prepared everything in just 3 minutes. This method surprised Tony. Generally speaking, when developing a new Iron Man suit, he would prepare several different materials to continuously identify and correct errors during testing. And judging from Chen Feng's appearance, it seemed these were all the materials he needed, and he didn't intend to use any others. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means it was downloaded and re-uploaded without effort. We warmly invite you to visit our channel, Fanfic World. There you will find the original version of this story and many other novels of various genres. We look forward to seeing you dive into a world of incredible novels. Chapter 96 Processing. How much confidence must one have to dare to do this? Tony took a deep breath, calming himself, and continued watching Chen Feng. "I'll see what kind of mess you can make with this stuff." At this moment, Chen Feng already had a complete set of training procedures for the Iron Man suit in his mind, from the first step to the final completion. Just like a PowerPoint presentation, it was perfectly displayed in Chen Feng's mind. He only needed to follow the steps in his mind, one by one, to create a more advanced Iron Man suit. Immediately, Chen Feng began to work. Judging from his appearance, he didn't look like a veteran at all, but rather like an old scholar who had tried countless times. Every step, every combination of parts, every application of calculation equations was just right, exquisite. It was basically impossible to see any mistakes in Chen Feng's work. It only felt like every step was the work of a master craftsman. This was not human, this was a super genius born for experimentation. Chen Feng continued with complete concentration. Although the speed was fast, there was not a single mistake. The Iron Man suit was gradually taking shape. Even Tony, witnessing the speed, could only sigh silently. Wrong, finally wrong. Just as Chen Feng was assembling the Iron Man suit's energy, Tony clenched his fist excitedly, as if he'd found a weakness. He silently shouted internally, his emotions surging. In Tony's view, following Chen Feng's method, the Iron Man suit's flight would definitely become a problem, perhaps even failing to successfully release energy and soar into the sky. However, Chen Feng paid no attention to Tony's jubilant reaction, continuing step by step at his own pace. From late afternoon until late at night, Chen Feng finally stopped, beads of sweat trickling from his forehead. Being a scientist is not only mentally demanding but also physically demanding. It requires constant focus, which most people simply cannot endure. "You've finished?" Tony asked incredulously, looking at Chen Feng who had stopped to rest. "You can try it now," Chen Feng said solemnly, pointing to the completed Iron Man suit. "Damn. This speed is terrifying, even faster than someone rushing to catch a train. Is he going to the hospital to give birth?" Tony thought for a moment. Even with Jarvis's help, it would take him at least a day to create a new Iron Man suit. How long has it been? At most 5 hours. It's terrifying. Let's try it on. Chen Feng placed a sensor in Tony's hand, and then the new Iron Man suit pieces flew onto Tony's body. In no time, Tony transformed into Iron Man. "Not bad. The Iron Man suit I made is indeed much cooler." Chen Feng nodded in satisfaction, a contented smile on his face. A good Iron Man suit not only needs excellent performance, but also a more exquisite and beautiful appearance. Tony, fly out and feel the power of the new suit. Chen Feng pressed the button in his hand, and instantly, the Iron Man suit automatically shot out flames, flying directly out of Stark Tower. Sir, everything is set up. You can test the functions of the new suit now. Jarvis's voice suddenly came out, reassuring Tony. Since Jarvis didn't say there was a problem, it meant that this suit was still reliable. Jarvis, calculate its flight speed, frictional resistance, air velocity, and energy loss. Tony, now in test mode, immediately became serious and said in a deep voice. The next moment, the speed of the Iron Man's suit suddenly increased, and only a blur and a bright ray of light could be seen in the sky. In an instant, the Iron Man suit broke through the clouds and arrived in the high sky. Without pausing for even a moment, Tony was already high in the sky, flying at top speed, weaving through the clouds. Wow! That's amazing! It's so exhilarating. Flying through the air, Tony once again felt the exhilaration of his first flight. That kind of pleasure hadn't been felt for a long time. Especially after the Colossus arc, Tony had been in a state of anxiety, his heart filled with unease. He constantly researched new suits, hoping to completely erase those worries. However, in his anxiety, the new suits Tony created were even more flawed. His inner turmoil prevented him from focusing on the suit's development. After flying for a long time, traversing the entire continent, Tony finally returned to Stark Tower. How was it? Pretty efficient, right? Chen Feng asked with a smile, a bit cheeky, looking at Tony as he emerged from the suit. It's alright, not too different from my Mark 7, Tony said stubbornly. Before Jarvis's final evaluation results were in, Tony wanted to maintain his stance. Stubborn to the end, Chen Feng smiled slightly, wanting to see how long he could keep up this argument. Sir, the new combat suit evaluation indices are all out. A moment later, Jarvis projected a series of data in front of Chen Feng and Tony. Upon seeing these data, Tony was completely stunned, his face twitching slightly. How did you do that? Tony turned his head sharply, looking at Chen Feng beside him, and asked with a puzzled expression. All the data showed that Chen Feng's new combat suit, in every aspect, was superior. Chen Feng gestured to Tony, signaling him to leave. Now, Tony, can you get out of this lab? Tony hesitated, wanting to say something, but in the end, he couldn't utter a word and walked out of the lab dejectedly. Now, even in his strongest area, he had been utterly crushed by Chen Feng. Was life really this cruel? Looking at Chen Feng, who had already started working in the lab, Tony was speechless. He really needed to think carefully about how to continue. Tony, is your experiment finished? Just then, Pepper Potts walked in, asking expectantly. Pepper, I want to go to Venice, just the two of us. Let's book the tickets now and leave immediately. Tony's eyes darted around as he muttered to himself. At that moment, Pepper Potts looked at Tony with disgust, wondering what had gotten into him. Although Tony had been in a bad mood lately, suffering from insomnia and frequent self-blame, today, on the 883rd day, he seemed even stranger, even a bit neurotic. Tony, I know you're upset, but I hope you can tell me, confide in me, instead of bearing it all alone. I'll do my best to help you, Pepper said, walking to Tony's side and touching his face with deep concern. Tony simply shook his head, knowing that no one but himself could truly help with his anxiety. Pepper, I just want to go to a peaceful and beautiful place to relax. Don't you want to come with me? Just think of the beautiful scenery of Nice, and the irresistible food. Promise me, let's go together. Tony grasped Pepper's hands in return, speaking earnestly. Before Pepper could finish speaking, a sound came from inside the laboratory, immediately attracting their attention. Chen Feng, when did you get here? I felt a little uneasy seeing the figure in the lab. It's nothing, you guys continue, don't worry about me. Chen Feng picked up the miniature electronic synthesizer in his hand and continued the creation of something new. Chen Feng, what's going on? Platinum turned to Tony and asked curiously. He's just here for a bit of fun. Let's discuss our trip to Venice. Tony changed the subject and didn't want to talk about Chen Feng anymore. Tony, instead of going to Venice, you should study the armor I created. Maybe it can solve your worries. Chen Feng's sudden remark startled Tony, who froze on the spot. Every night, the scene from that day would reappear before his eyes, the alien invasion of Earth, his transport of nuclear missiles out of Earth, the mystery of the last moment, and the disappearance of Rubo from his mind. The main reason for all of this was that his strength was too weak compared to the aliens. If the aliens invaded Earth again, he didn't know if he could resist them once more. Without more powerful weapons, the dream will never disappear. Chen Feng, I understand now, Tony suddenly realized. Previously, because Chen Feng had completely trampled on his last shred of dignity, he had lost his composure and forgotten the most important point. But now, Chen Feng's words had made Tony rediscover that point. Quickly arriving at the new Iron Man suit, Tony took it and headed directly to another backup laboratory. He would assist Chen Feng in his modifications, reforging a suit of armor truly capable of dealing with alien technology. Platinum, then continue handling the company matters, Tony said, leaving behind these words before departing. What is this again? Pepper sighed helplessly, wondering what kind of man he had fallen for. He didn't know if Tony would ultimately succeed, but at least for the time being, he was quite busy. A long while later, Chen Feng in the lab stopped what he was doing. Looking at the gleaming new equipment before him, he smiled with satisfaction. Peter, with this, dealing with the Green Goblin will be much easier, Chen Feng muttered to himself. He put the new equipment in his hand and prepared to leave Stark Tower. Should he go see how Tony was doing? Chen Feng turned his head to look behind him, somewhat hesitant. He mainly wanted to know if Tony, this genius scientist, had understood the thoughts of the most brilliant man from the continent of Zingwen. Never mind, going there would only hurt his pride, that wouldn't be good, Chen Feng thought for a moment, and finally decided to give up. Otherwise, given his personality, if Tony hadn't even understood, he would definitely give him another lecture. If he destroyed the confidence Tony had painstakingly rebuilt, he might really develop depression. Chapter 97 Horror. If Tony were to develop depression, he wouldn't order the Iron Man suit to be destroyed, and he'd become the first superhero killed by his own equipment, making him a laughingstock for all the villains. To avoid such a tragedy, Chen Feng decided to leave quietly. The next morning, Chen Feng arranged to meet Peter in Central Park. Chen Feng, are you going to give me the secret thing? Peter weaved through the dense forest and arrived in front of Chen Feng a moment later. Here, take a look. Chen Feng placed the small bag in Peter's hand without revealing its contents. What mysterious thing could it be? Could it be a new suit? Could it be one of Tony Stark's Iron Man suits? You know, I absolutely adore Mr. Stark's armor, I dream of owning one. Chen Feng, if you could give me one, I'd remember it forever. Please. Please. It has to be one, even if it's not quite right, Peter pleaded, opening the bag and scratching it repeatedly. She looks just like an old auntie on the street, so much like Yang Ming. Just these few things. Peter looked at the small triangular object, the quadrilateral object, and the rhombus object in his hand. He was somewhat disappointed. He looked at Chen Feng with resentment, seemingly wanting an explanation. Just try it and you'll know. Chen Feng ignored Peter's dissatisfaction and calmly said. But how do you use this? After hearing Chen Feng's words, Peter calmed down and played with the three devices in his hand, somewhat bewildered. The triangular one, pointed in front of you, the quadrilateral one, on your shoulder, and the rhombus one, on your hand. Chen Feng pointed to the parts of Peter's body and told him how to use it. Triangle, front, quadrilateral, shoulder, rhombus, hand. Following Chen Feng's instructions, Peter placed each one in its designated position. As soon as the three objects were attached to Peter's body, a red and white bodysuit appeared on him. It was exactly the same as the outfit he always wore as a knight. This is, Peter looked at his hands and the clothes that had appeared on his body, somewhat stunned. Your new battlesuit, isn't it nice? Chen Feng smiled slightly. It was very beautiful, and felt incredibly refreshing. Unlike his old uniform, it was as if he wasn't wearing a uniform at all. Peter took a deep breath, and his body felt incredibly refreshed. The air of nature perfectly permeated the battlesuit and entered Peter's body. Chen Feng, this battlesuit was also particularly light, with absolutely no sense of weight, as if air was covering his body. Peter continued to feel the battlesuit on his body and discovered another advantage. That's normal. This battlesuit is made of ultra-thin carbon fiber, and it also incorporates memory metal, which can shrink and enter the body at will, making it more convenient. You won't need to carry a battlesuit with you anymore, Chen Feng explained proudly. With the abilities of the great inventor, Merdinger, all of this was a piece of cake. Of course, in addition to technology, Chen Feng also added magic to the battlesuit. To be able to combine technology and magic, perhaps only Chen Feng could do it. However, Peter hasn't yet discovered the magic added to this battlesuit. You can activate the quadrilateral element and try its abilities, Chen Feng said suddenly, watching Peter curiously inspect the battlesuit. Peter finally snapped out of his daze and nodded. The quadrilateral element passively connected with a triangular element. Suddenly, a burst of gas shot out from Peter's back, sending him soaring into the sky. What is this thing? Put me down quickly. Peter was still a little unaccustomed to flying, and for a moment he was flustered, bobbing up and down in midair. Peter, steady yourself. What's the panic? It's just flying once, right? Don't you really like Stark's Iron Man suit? Chen Feng shouted from below. But Peter was completely panicked, and this was a completely different matter. Swinging up and down in the air, Peter lost control of his body and was on the verge of fainting. Peter. A female knight-errant, always swinging around in the air, and now she's scared? She has no backbone? Chen Feng frowned and sighed helplessly. Left with no other choice, he used his magic to freeze Peter in midair. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Peter finally calmed down a little. Sudden aerial flight was a difficult task even for a knight-errant. Peter, didn't you want to experience the feeling of real flight? Now you can. Don't be like a bird that needs its mother's help to soar through the sky. You're an adult now, you know? You have to rely on yourself for everything. Don't make me think you're well, you know, Chen Feng said seriously, showing no mercy to Peter. Peter, suspended in midair, fell into a daze upon hearing this. Indeed, he wanted Iron Man's armor, and his current behavior justified being reprimanded by Chen Feng. Chen Feng, I understand. I'll try my best from now on. After a while, Peter made up his mind and tightened his grip. Good to know. With that brief sentence, Chen Feng dispelled the magic. This sudden action caught Peter completely off guard, plunging him into a state of shock once again. Hey, Chen Feng, I'm not ready yet. You're so sudden. Words sound impressive, but putting them into practice is quite different. Throat, it seems I still need more training. Chen Feng shook his head helplessly, using magic to lower Peter down. But Peter had already passed out, and there seemed to be a little drool on his horn. You, Spider-Man, are afraid of dizziness? That's too illogical. Chen Feng couldn't understand why someone with such superhuman physical abilities would faint. But it was all too sudden, and Peter's nervousness, combined with other factors, led to the current situation. Without waiting long, Chen Feng used a purification technique to instantly wake Peter. Chen Feng, actually, first wipe the saliva off your lips, it looks disgusting. Peter quickly wiped his lips, his face instantly wet with embarrassment. Today was truly a day of utter humiliation. Alright, that's enough. Keep practicing. Before the Green Goblin arrives, you'd better master aerial flight. Otherwise, if you don't have the terrain advantage, you'll lose badly. Chen Feng poured cold water on Peter's enthusiasm. I understand, Peter nodded solemnly. He knew that he was able to defeat the Green Goblin last time because of the geographical advantage. In an open area, the fight would not be so simple. The final outcome might even be different. Let's begin. At Chen Feng's command, Peter took to the air. Compared to his initial clumsiness, Peter, mentally and physically prepared, displayed the strength of a superhero. After a few minutes, he mastered the flying technique. After more than 10 minutes, he could freely traverse the forest unharmed. This was more like a superhero. Seeing Peter's progress, Chen Feng silently praised him, thinking that completing the system's task was indeed quite tiring. With Peter mastering the flying skill, this part of the matter was over. Peter, the last piece of equipment I gave you mainly strengthened your spider silk, so it won't be so easily severed when facing the Green Goblin's attacks, Chen Feng said to Peter. These 3 new pieces of equipment were crafted by Chen Feng at Stark Tower. These are only the 3 simplest pieces of equipment. I'll forge better equipment for you when I have more energy and time, Chen Feng said calmly. But these words shocked Peter. Such powerful equipment was only the simplest. How terrifying would the more advanced ones be? Could they even fly directly from New York to New Mexico? For a moment, Peter's imagination ran wild, his mind racing. He was also incredibly excited to see how overpowered the next piece of equipment would be. Try your spider silk first, and see how it's done, Chen Feng said, looking at the dazed Peter. This kid, I wonder what he's thinking about now. Oh, I'll try it out. Peter snapped out of his daze, aimed his right hand at a large tree in front of him, and shot out a strand of spider silk. Bang! The silk pierced directly into the tree, creating a tiny hole. Its force is astonishing. Is this still my spider silk? It could probably kill someone. Peter stared blankly at the silk embedded in the tree, muttering incredulously. You can increase the power of your spider silk even further, Chen Feng said casually. Can it be increased further? Peter was even more surprised upon hearing this, but at the same time, his excitement was ignited. After increasing the power of the spider silk through his body, Peter once again aimed at the tree in front of him. A gust of wind blew by, and another strand of spider silk shot out, piercing through the entire tree the moment it touched it. As soon as the spider silk pierced through, the entire tree shattered from the point of impact. Bang! An explosion rang out, and the wood flew through the air before slowly falling to the ground. This power is terrifying. At this moment, Peter was truly stunned, his face stiffened, and he turned his head like a robot to look at Chen Feng. I've only slightly increased its hardness and toughness. I'll strengthen your spider silk later, but you'll still be able to control it, Chen Feng said calmly. It was as if he were describing an extremely ordinary matter, without any ripples. Will you strengthen it again later? Peter asked in surprise, realizing that his thinking speed was completely inferior to Chen Feng's. This was like the gap between the technology of Skanderbeg and Earth, which Peter felt was like an insurmountable chasm. Next, get used to this new battle suit and its functions to prepare for defeating the Green Goblin. Chen Feng finished speaking and was about to go to the side to watch. Suddenly, another idea popped into his head, and he continued, Oh, right, Peter, I forgot to tell you something. This battle suit has other functions as well. I hope you can discover them yourself. It will be very interesting. Chen Feng's words shocked Peter again, raising his expectations to another level. The current functions were already quite extraordinary. If there were other functions, and judging from Chen Feng's tone, wouldn't it be even more terrifying? Chapter 98 Confidence. Without further ado, Peter immediately began testing. For the first part of the test, Peter didn't notice anything unusual and felt quite relaxed. This made him a little frustrated. Was Chen Feng deceiving him? But after a while, Peter realized that Chen Feng wasn't deceiving him, but rather that he hadn't found the key point. To test the new state of the battle armor, it couldn't remain uneventful. It needed some attacks and pressure. Once he understood this, the subsequent tests became much easier. Peter quickly discovered the other functions within the battle armor. These included providing a shield when attacked, instantly increasing flight speed, and finally, the ability to enter the void and emerge from another location. This last function was incredibly powerful, essentially giving Peter a legitimate opportunity to attack. It must be said that Chen Feng's 3 spells perfectly met Xiaomi's needs. They indirectly increased her combat power, ensuring that in her fight against the Green Demon, she wouldn't be at a disadvantage due to her equipment, but would consistently maintain the upper hand. That's enough for today's training. But you must persevere until you completely master it, before defeating the Green Goblin. After Chen Fengjian finished speaking, he left the park with Peter. In the following days, Peter continued to transform into the hero of the West at night, upholding justice and punishing evil. At the same time, he constantly practiced the functions of his new fighting suit while dealing with bad guys. Now, he had reached a level of consummate skill. Inside the Osborn group, Norman stood in front of the aircraft, looking at his reflection in the mirror, and muttered to himself, Yankee, your son is indeed outstanding, even exceeding my expectations, but unfortunately, Peter blocked my way. He's blocking my path, you understand? So there's no other way, I have to kill him. I'm so frustrated, I'm so frustrated, I'm so frustrated, ha 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 ha, your whole family, you can reunite underground. Norman laughed maniacally, almost grotesquely. He looked like a mentally unstable person. In the 6th block of Queens, Peter was patrolling the building as usual. 4.3 Following the building, the cool evening breeze was blowing, and Peter felt very satisfied. Especially the recent decrease in crime made him very happy. He felt a sense of pride. It's all because of me that the 6th block has enjoyed such a long period of peace. My fate. My fate. Who can stop me? Just then, a sharp and urgent shout suddenly came from an alley in the distance. Peter's face immediately darkened when he heard it, and he rushed into the alley. In less than a moment, he slapped himself hard across the face. I must teach this ignorant brat a lesson he won't forget. Peter's mood plummeted. Buddy, I'm in a bad mood right now, so stop your disgusting behavior, or I might just give you a good beating, Peter yelled angrily at the black man in front of him who was already tearing off a woman's clothes. If it weren't for his large white teeth, One would think he was a mutant with invisibility committing violence. Upon hearing this, the black man turned his head in a panic, and his erect penis immediately went limp. Just as the black man was filled with rage, ready to avenge his penis, his switchblade flashing coldly, Peter's appearance completely terrified him. No joke, he really peed a few drops. Spider-Man? Don't kill me, don't kill me. I'll get out of here, I'll get out of here. The switchblade in the black man's hand fell, and he hurriedly bowed and scraped, forgetting to even pull up his pants, as he slowly walked away. Did I say you could leave? Peter stepped closer to the black man, simultaneously gesturing for the woman who had been assaulted to leave quickly. What was about to happen would be bloody and violent. Ordinary people shouldn't watch, lest it leave them with psychological trauma. In broad daylight, no, under my supervision, Su Xia's supervision, you still dare to commit such heinous acts, doing things that defy all reason and law. You must learn your lesson, or you will never repent. Peter walked over step by step, but those light steps felt as heavy as dry matter to the black man, as if stepping on his heart, making it hard for him to breathe. Have mercy. Have mercy. Please let me go, Spider-Man. I promise I'll never do this again. I'll turn over a new leaf, help old ladies cross the street, donate cables to homeless people, and stop littering and spitting. Please let me go. Under extreme pressure, the black man spoke incredibly fast, his rapid-fire words startling Peter. Pressure breeds motivation, that saying is certainly true. For rapists, I'll confiscate their tools so they'll learn their lesson and never do it again. Peter made a V sign, pointing to the black man's genitals. No. No. Please let me go. My mother is hoping to have a grandchild this year. And I'm her only child. If you do this, our family will be without anyone to carry on. My mother and father will be heartbroken, the black man cried and begged Peter, tears streaming down his face. Seeing this, Peter nodded in satisfaction. Confiscating his tools was just a joke, the main point was to make him realize his mistake and repent. Now it seemed the black man had completely understood his error and was willing to change. Seeing how sincere you are, I'll let you go. Before he finished speaking, a sense of danger suddenly arose, and Peter felt a surge of fear. Peter hesitated for a moment, but quickly moved away from the black man's snap. Bang! Bang! Immediately afterward, a sharp, ear-piercing burst of gunfire rang out. The black man before him, riddled with bullets, collapsed to the ground instantly, forever gone from this world. Ha ha ha, Spider-Man, weren't you going to judge this black man? Why aren't you doing it? In the distance, a villain in a green suit, riding a flying machine, appeared before Peter. Spider-Man! You murderer! Peter roared. Looking at the dead black man on the ground, his anger flared. Peter had never intended to kill this man, only to teach him a lesson so he would never again. I'm a murderer. Ha ha ha. Yes, I am a murderer, and I'm going to show you. The green-suited villain laughed maniacally, like a weapon from the earth. You're so arrogant. A green thread suddenly shot out from his hand, striking the green demon. You think you can use this to fight me? The green demon sneered, a sharp blade suddenly appearing in his hand, gleaming coldly. The next moment, it pierced the silk. What? A crisp sound rang out. The silk hadn't broken, but instead, there were signs of wear on the blade. Your spider silk, how could it be? The green demon was shocked. This blade was specifically designed to deal with Peter's spider silk. But now, not only was it useless, but he'd even been killed. There are many things you can't imagine, Peter said smugly. He then charged forward, firing several more strands of silk. You brat, don't be so smug. You think you can defeat me like this? The green demon roared angrily. Drops of white liquid suddenly flowed from his green armor, instantly dissolving the spider silk binding him. The aircraft, which had been flying, suddenly spewed flames and, without flashing, crashed into Peter. The pumpkin bomb at his waist was now firmly in his hand, the pin already pulled. Die, you little beast, Green Goblin roared, throwing the pumpkin bomb at Peter's location at 370 degrees. Bang! A deafening explosion echoed through the heavens and earth, only a cloud of smoke remained, and Peter's figure had vanished completely. Ha ha ha, you little bastard, you're dead, Green Goblin laughed heartily, looking at the smoke. But before the smoke could dissipate, a figure suddenly appeared behind Green Goblin, kicking him in the back. Green Goblin nearly fell off the aircraft, quickly turning his head. Hero, you're still here? Green Goblin was utterly shocked to see the menacing figure before him. How did he detonate my bomb? For a moment, Green Goblin's mind raced, and he even looked at Peter with a hint of disdain. "I told you, there are many things you can't imagine," Peter said cheerfully. This unexpected attack was truly gratifying. "You think you can fight a whole group by yourself? Don't dream," Green Goblin shouted sternly. He had the entire Spencer Group and countless top scientists behind him. "How could a little kid like you, all alone, possibly fight against a company and a whole bunch of people?" This was Green Goblin Norman Osborn's greatest confidence. Norman adjusted his aircraft, and bullets rained down like a storm, giving Peter almost no room to dodge. But Peter didn't need to dodge. He increased the stiffness of the silk and fired directly. The silk expanded, forming a giant spider web. All the bullets were stopped within the first section of the web. Not a single bullet could penetrate the web and hit Peter behind it. "Impossible." Norman stared in disbelief at Peter, who appeared completely unharmed. These bullets were the latest development from the Osborn Group, designed to counter Stark Industries. Their power was so great that they could pierce even a 5mm thick steel plate. "You'll be even more shocked next," Peter said, a confident smile spreading across his face. It had to be said that the equipment Chen Feng had provided had significantly enhanced his combat capabilities. Facing such high technology, he had a much greater chance of victory, even dominating the fight. Norman quickly flew upwards, reaching a height of tens of meters. The elevated position further boosted Norman's confidence. Chapter 99 Shock. This area, while not particularly empty, was mostly filled with low-rise buildings. Even with Peter's ability to use his silken sway, he couldn't reach this height. "You can't hit me, but I can keep attacking you. Hero, let's see how you defeat me," Norman laughed arrogantly. The flying machine beneath his feet once again spewed out endless tongues of fire, unleashing a torrential downpour of whistling bullets. But Norman was clearly wrong again. Peter leaped into the air, rising directly into the air, his quadrilateral body allowing him to float indefinitely, just like Tony's Iron Man suit. When Norman saw Peter flying in the air and froze, Peter wouldn't let this opportunity pass. The energy in his shoulder and leg bones erupted again. A blur streaked across the sky, and Peter's body instantly appeared behind Norman. He punched Norman hard in the head, while simultaneously launching silken threads that bound Norman's body, including his arms. "Get down." Peter kicked Norman in the backside, hurling him from the aircraft and sending him plummeting dozens of meters into the air. "Kid," Norman cursed, remaining completely calm despite his rapid fall. The aircraft arrived at his location at top speed, catching him just before he hit the ground. A few drops of white liquid oozed from the armor again, but this time, it didn't melt the spider silk quickly. "What the hell is this spider silk?" Norman roared, looking at his opponent as he rose into the air. "Why should I tell you? This is just a defeated opponent. You should think about how to defeat me instead of ruining this fight." Peter's sarcastic skills, under Chen Feng's personal tutelage, have improved dramatically. "Little rabbit, I'll make you pay the price for your arrogance, just like your father," Norman deliberately shouted loudly, making sure Peter heard him. As expected, Peter froze on the spot after hearing this. Two missiles below the aircraft, along with a pumpkin bomb at his waist, attacked Peter with lightning speed. Just as the missiles and pumpkin bomb were about to reach Peter, his spider senses suddenly activated. The extreme sense of crisis made Peter react quickly, forcefully activating his quadrilateral body. At this moment, his speed even exceeded the speed of sound, narrowly escaping the attack. The pumpkin bomb exploded, directly destroying a house, leaving only rubble and debris. But the remaining two missiles seemed to have a self-locking function, constantly following behind Peter. "Let's see how you get in now." Norman remained leisurely aboard the aircraft, watching the missiles engage in a chase. Peter, meanwhile, kept an eye on the missiles behind him, constantly shooting webs and weaving through the alleyways. However, due to the large number of people in the 6th block, Peter couldn't allow the missiles to randomly crash into any building. If someone were inside, he would feel incredibly guilty. Damn it. Peter's face darkened, his hatred for Norman reaching its peak. "I've got it. Green Goblin, I'll lure him there." An idea suddenly popped into Peter's mind, and a look of joy returned. An eye for an eye. Looking at the missiles rushing towards him, Norman's face was grim. "You little brat, do you think you're so clever?" Norman sneered. These two missiles weren't just simple auto-tracking. Peter stared at the motionless Norman before him, a sudden unease creeping into his heart. Something was amiss. This was the thought that immediately crossed Peter's mind. But he still had to try. Even if there's some dark magic involved, we'll show the Green Goblin some real skill. Peter quickly rushed in front of Norman, then made a sharp turn, skimming close to his body as he flew upwards. Does he think he's so clever? As he passed Norman, he suddenly heard his voice. Peter immediately knew something was wrong. Looking down, he saw 2 pumpkin-shaped bullets already strapped to his waist. The pumpkin heads gleamed brightly, as if radiating heat. Damn it, Peter cursed, trying to remove the pumpkin bomb from his waist when it exploded. Norman raised his hand to block a small portion of the blast's aftershock, his devil mask laced with sarcasm. Smoke and dust filled the sky, almost obscuring the bright moon. The 2 bombs, just before reaching Norman, reacted with incredible speed, changing direction and hurtling into the smoke. Could Peter still be alive? Norman's eyes widened in shock. 2 pumpkin bombs, and they couldn't kill Peter? Was he a mutant? A flurry of thoughts raced through Norman's mind. But just then, 2 missiles burst from the smoke, heading towards Norman's back. Fuck, Norman whirled around, just in time to see a missile hurtling towards him. Bang! A muffled thud, and Peter sent Norman flying. The 2 missiles immediately followed. Peter had to change direction, sidestepping as the crystals in his shoulder and leg bones unleashed energy, propelling him upwards. The 2 missiles behind him continued to follow Peter tirelessly, reacting extremely quickly, unlike in the movies where they would randomly crash into any tree. This thing has to be destroyed. Peter kept navigating the empty streets, his mind racing. He desperately wanted to find a way to deal with the missiles. After rounding a bend, an idea suddenly popped into his head. The diamond-shaped object in his hand activated its energy transmission to the maximum. Then, it sprayed several clusters of spider silk at the 2 missiles behind him at incredible speed. Even though the missiles reacted quickly, they couldn't outrun these clusters of spider silk. You think you can stop the Cherokee missiles with these little things? Don't be delusional. Norman watched this scene with a surge of displeasure. What does this kid think missiles are? He thinks he can stop them with spider silk. Whoosh! But the moment the spider silk touched the missiles, both missiles exploded. A burst of intense fire appeared in the sky, instantly illuminating the entire dark 6th Street. What? Norman exclaimed in shock, his mouth agape. He had no idea how many times he'd been this shocked. Tonight, Peter had given Norman far more than he'd ever imagined. This spider silk with maximum energy was comparable to titanium alloy, wasn't it? Peter himself was somewhat surprised. The spider silk could actually block missiles and even neutralize them. Even he hadn't expected it to this extent. Now that the missiles were gone, let's see how you dodge my attacks. A bright smile appeared on Peter's lips. Now was his time to retaliate. The energy released from the quadrilateral structure at his shoulder and ankle bones was instantly delivered to Norman. The spider silk from his hand flew out and wrapped around his demon mask, instantly obscuring Norman's vision. But at that moment, Norman suddenly pulled out a sharp knife and slashed at Peter. His senses instantly alerted him. Spider silk shot out from Peter's hand, and he slid backward, narrowly avoiding the attack. At the same time, he kicked Norman hard in the back, sending him off the aircraft. The silk was ejected at top speed, attempting to bind the aircraft. Chapter 100 Dissolving. But he was still one step behind, letting it fly to Norman's feet and land safely on him. You're lucky you were quick, otherwise you'd be falling from dozens of meters in the air and smashing to pieces, Peter said coldly. He flew back towards Norman in the distance. Norman knew he couldn't fight him head-on. He needed to figure out how to deal with Peter before attacking. Otherwise, he would be at a disadvantage and have no chance of winning. It was too late to dodge now. Peter looked at Norman flying away and let out a cold shout. Energy erupted violently, and he caught up with Norman. Pumpkin bombs appeared in Norman's hand in an instant. He pulled a pin and bombed Peter. Although none of the pumpkin bombs hit Peter, the aftershocks stopped Peter's pursuit of Norman. It could be said that Norman's fighting strategy was successful. In Queens, at Chen Feng's house. Mindy, haven't you always wanted to know what I gave Peter? I'll show you now. Chen Feng looked at the screen on his watch and asked calmly. Great. Let's go. Mindy grabbed Chen Feng's hand and said happily. She had sensed something was going to happen tonight while Chen Feng was changing clothes, so she promptly changed into her new clothes, waiting for Chen Feng's announcement. You're such a clever little devil, let's go. Chen Feng pinched Mindy's delicate nose and smiled. With such a clever little devil, nothing could compare to her. A purple crack suddenly appeared in front of them, and void power spread out from it. Chen Feng led Mindy into it, and a moment later, they arrived in an alley in the 6th district. At this moment, Peter and Norman were locked in a fierce struggle dozens of meters in the air. But overall, Peter had the upper hand, subtly suppressing Norman. "Peter, how can he fly?" Mindy looked at Peter in the air with curiosity and asked with a puzzled expression. "This is the new equipment I gave him," Chen Feng answered proudly, he said. He then explained the functions of the new equipment he'd given Peter to Mindy. Upon hearing this, Mindy involuntarily gave him a thumbs up, her eyes sparkling as she looked at Chen Feng. Her admiration for him grew stronger. Such a handsome, tall, intelligent, and capable man who could also cook, he was practically the perfect partner. For a moment, Mindy was completely captivated by Chen Feng's good looks, her hands clasped tightly, clearly smitten. "Did you want to see Peter? Why are you staring at me?" Chen Feng, seeing Mindy's expression, was both amused and exasperated. This girl, even at a time like this, could lose herself in her own world. "What's so interesting about Peter? He's nowhere near as handsome as you, brother Chen Feng," Mindy said without any shyness. She took Chen Feng's hand and leaned against his chest, her face full of happiness. Sometimes, being too outstanding can be a burden. Chen Feng could only sigh in silence. In the sky, Peter and Norman's fight had reached a fever pitch. From their initial probing to their current fist-to-fist exchange, both were completely familiar with each other and understood each other's attack patterns. Pumpkin bombs exploded one after another in the air, like beautiful fireworks. Below, Chen Feng and Mindy were like newlyweds, enjoying the fireworks that witnessed their love. In the sky, Peter dodged constantly, avoiding being hurt by the pumpkin bombs. However, there were still some that Peter couldn't deflect. But with the help of the protective shield of his new combat suit, he completely neutralized the damage. Therefore, Peter was unharmed in the rain of pumpkin bombs. "Damn it! We're out of bombs." Norman skillfully reached into his waistband, but his hand was empty. Then they realized the pumpkin bombs were all used up. While Norman was still stunned, Peter quickly approached, his webs reaching him first and binding him. Peter then arrived, standing on the flying vehicle, punching Norman hard in the face and kicking him in the ankle. Even with a protective suit, Norman couldn't help but scream in pain. Keep in mind that in the comics, Spider-Man Peter's strength is nearly 60 tons. Just a little less than the Hulk. Even though Peter's strength has been somewhat reduced in the cinematic universe, it's still at least 40-50 tons. Using his bare hands to stop a train and pulling a cruise ship that was splitting in two, he demonstrated just how terrifying his strength is. So, the fact that a single blow to Norman didn't break his ribs proves just how sturdy his demonic armor is. With that punch, Norman fell from the aircraft. Sensing its master's fall, the aircraft tried to teach Norman a lesson. But Peter, already aboard, wouldn't give him the chance. Spider silk shot from his wrists, binding the aircraft like a mummy, almost immobile. Yet, the aircraft struggled violently, desperately trying to teach Norman. The energy jet spewed out scorching energy, but it had no effect against the iron-hard spider silk. Without energy, the aircraft couldn't stay in the air and quickly crashed vertically to the ground. Norman was almost hitting the ground. A fall from that height would mean certain death or serious injury. But Peter had made up his mind not to help Norman. The evil Green Goblin had injured so many people and destroyed so many houses, he needed serious medical attention. But then, Peter suddenly remembered the Green Goblin's words related to his father. "Peter, it's me. It's your Uncle Norman. Help me." Norman suddenly removed his evil mask, revealing his true face. He shouted at Peter. Peter, with his exceptional senses and eyesight, immediately recognized Norman and was utterly shocked. At that moment, Peter thought of his parents, who had worked for the Osborn Group, and his best friend, Harry. If Norman were crippled, Harry, already despondent, would undoubtedly suffer even more. After all, Harry was his best friend, and the deaths of his parents seemed inextricably linked to Norman. A spiderweb suddenly shot out from the corner of his hand, traversing space in an instant. In a very short time, it pulled Norman to his feet. At the last second, Norman's face was only a centimeter from the ground. "Tell me quickly, how did my parents die?" Peter immediately flew to Norman's side, grabbed his collar, and asked solemnly. "Peter, don't get excited. Wait a minute, I'll tell you." Norman looked extremely uncomfortable, his face deathly pale, and pointed at Peter, who was grabbing his collar. Peter forcefully threw Norman aside. Lying on the ground, Norman, with a stern expression, smiled at Peter and said, word by word, Peter, I have to admit, your intelligence and talent far surpass your parents. To be able to independently create such a powerful weapon, I have to give you a thumbs up. How about this? You join the Osborn Corporation, become the chief research officer, and you won't have to worry about anything. As long as you can help the Osborn Corporation surpass Stark Industries, not to mention money, I can even give you 2% of the corporation's share. Do you know how much 2% is? It's hundreds of billions of dollars. Just as Norman was getting excited, Peter suddenly slapped him across the face, instantly causing it to swell and turn red. You bastard. I don't care how much money you give me. Don't change the subject. Tell me how my parents died. Peter glared at Norman, his expression serious. If it weren't for Harry, he would have killed Norman right now. Ha, Peter, since you're so eager to know, I can tell you. But I hope you'll agree to one condition. After you know, join the Osborn group and help Harry. He'll be so lonely and helpless without me. As his best friend, please help him. Even in this state of despair, covered in dust and grime, Norman still smiled brightly. What do you mean by that? Do you want to die? Peter was somewhat confused by Norman, but something felt off. Actually, I tricked your parents out of the company and then killed them. Norman's soft words were like a sharp blade piercing Peter's heart. For a moment, he froze, staring blankly at Norman before him. What did you say? Say it again. I said, I killed your parents, Norman continued, as if recounting the most mundane event. Killed your parents? Peter said softly and slowly. Killed your parents. My parents died at your hands. Peter froze, while Norman's gaze remained fixed on the aircraft behind him. Almost there, just a little longer. The spider silk binding the aircraft was almost melting away. Bright flames could be seen shooting out from the rear. You killed my parents, Peter shouted angrily. He pressed his hands firmly against Norman's shoulders, and in an instant, Norman's shoulder bones shattered, making a cracking sound. Norman remained silent, a smile that was hard to describe still lingering on his face. A glint of light flickered in his eyes, like the light of victory. Peter, get out of the way, Chen Feng's shout suddenly rang out. At the same time, the spider senses also issued a warning. Peter panicked for a moment, then the quadrilateral structure at his shoulder bone unleashed its maximum energy. In an instant, Peter vanished from Norman's sight. Ah! A scream rang out, then silence fell. When Peter looked down, he saw that Norman was dead, his own aircraft impaled in his mouth. At that moment, Peter, suspended in midair, was completely stunned. Norman is dead. This news struck Peter like a thunderbolt. End of this chapter. Thank you so much for reading until the end. Don't forget to give it a like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription or donation encourages us to continue. Thank you all. See you in the next video.